Okay, we're live. Let's, pulling up the chat. Okay. We are live. Okay, link is in the chat. Okay. Go ahead and start the test animation. So let people come in for the first 5 minutes or so. It's gonna be a little while. In terms of the test animation, I'm going for the approach of slightly increasing quality every time. This week's edition is a skybox, sort of. It's actually just a plain texture JPEG, I want to say. I used a JPEG on a cube that is on the same track as the camera, moving at the same speed as the camera to have the illusion of it being behind things. I also changed the lighting a little bit and some of the render settings. Still get that circle effect. Still working on it though. The goal is to just slowly increase quality. Next time, possibly change the color of the text or add a bevel effect. I think black outline might look nice, but it's good to have goals and projects where you get to continue to grow as they develop. I am re-rendering the same animation every time I do a stream, so that's not great. It's like several hours render time, but usually I'm asleep during it, so it's a 0 time cost. Plus, I think it's sort of cool to see all the TCG releases in the order and rough scale of when they were released. The bulk of this video is going to actually be the Invasion of Chaos set, but before that we're actually going to go over the video game promos, at least the North American release, for World Championship 2004 first. There's only 3 of them, so we're not going to make an actual tier list. And in terms of impact, they are okay. I find them pretty interesting, so they're definitely worth mentioning. And one of them is very significant because it had a name change errata. That's not a design mistake, by the way. That's just poor regionalization, as many things seem to be. And it's not even Archfiend. Like, usually those are the ones that get the name change. There is a link to the live version for the tier list if you're interested in making contributions to it. Hopefully it's working properly. I know last time it ended after an hour for some reason. I set it to last for a full day, but it got cut off at an hour for some reason. But there it is, the Invasion of Chaos set. Boy, this is where Yu-Gi-Oh! Really starts to get special. Like, so much of the game changes. The whole identity of the game changes with this set. But before we get to that, let's go over those promos. Title card. Test animation. Check. Let's put the cursor on. And let's start by talking about the World Championship 2004 promos. There's only 3 of them. I'm just going to have the card up. First card is Fairy King Truesdale. I guess since it's just the card, we can make it bigger. Oh boy. Dawn of the First Ban List. Not technically, but that's a pretty accurate take. Rise of the Ban List, maybe? Oh, you're right, because I think no card was banned before this point. Let me double check that. That is not on the top of my head. Welcome, Mr. Metal. First card is Fairy King Truesdale. Water attribute, level 6, plant, effect. While this card is in defense position, all plant-type monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, 2200 attack, and 1500 defense. I don't think this card has ever been particularly useful, but it sort of looks like Link to me. I don't know if that's intentional. In terms of quality, I'd guess I'd put it in bad, but I'm just going to skip over it. In the same set, we actually get Kinetic Soldier. And this card is the one that's got the name change. Let's see if we can find it. Nope. Where are you? No. I had everything ready, and now I can't find anything. That's okay. Kinetic Soldier got changed to Cypher Soldier, so now it's part of the Cypher card archetype. That's the only change. But in terms of impact, this card's pretty interesting. Earth attribute, level 3, machine, effect. During damage calculation, if this card battles a warrior-type monster, this card gains 2000 attack and defense, during damage calculation only. 1350 attack, 1800 defense on a level 3. This card is great. This card is pretty good side deck tech. It's a giant rat target, so you can actually use it in a rat toolbox, but I don't think you main deck it. I'm not going to mention the Cypher archetype because that's getting into a completely different discussion. But this card was pretty meta as a side deck tech, and I think that's pretty cool. Last card in the set is Slate Warrior. Wind attribute, level 4, Fiend, effect, or I guess flip effect. This card hasn't had problem solving card text yet. Flip. This card gains 500 attack and defense. If this card is destroyed by battle, the monster that destroyed it loses 500 attack and defense. 1900 attack, 400 defense. This card was really impactful in the metagame. Those stats are just way too strong. 1900 attack and potentially stronger if you can wait the turn. From Kuchito08, I just remember Truesdale from Duelist of the Roses as one of the starting leaders. Interesting. I need to play through Duelist of the Roses at some point. It's so cool to see Kinetic Soldier as a tech back in the day from Mr. Metal. I agree. I think the card's really cool, but I think it being a video game promo is not great for distribution. It makes me a little bit sad because I think cards like Kinetic Soldier, Last Day of Witch, Warrior Elimination, a whole bunch of different cards could have been way more impactful back in the day if they had better releases. But those are the 3 promos from World Championship 2004. I guess, going back, Truesdale gets a C, Kinetic Soldier gets an A, Slate Warrior gets an A also. And apparently it's the first card Mr. Metal ever owned. Very cool. The first card I ever owned was a Japanese Mirage Knight. I have no idea where I got it or where it ended up. I think I got it from like a friend on the bus or something. I was amazed. I have no idea where it is now. But I wish I had it. ReZero's MC. I am live. Yeah. I agree. The video game promos probably sold more than the actual games. Or in terms of demand, I think the demand for the cards that were packaged with them was way higher than the actual games. Personally, I think the great balance point is where you're re-releasing fan favorites like Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician. Cards that are relatively obvious. A lot of people want them, especially if they're alternate art, but they don't really impact the metagame. And it doesn't have to be the fan favorite cards. It could be Ojamas with new artwork or shiny versions of Ojamas. I don't really care. But I think there hasn't been a video game promo since Proglio, I want to say is the most recent one, but it's been a while. Check out Slate Warrior. I think we are ready to start. That is locked. I think we're ready to start the Invasion of Chaos. F11. Okay, so we need to hide cursor. There we go. Move the viewer count a little bit more in the corner. Hopefully this one is not going to be so rusty. Last time was rough. But it had been a year and, you know. Okay. We are starting off with quite the heavy hitter. With Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End. Dark Attribute, level 8, Dragon Effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, send as many cards in both players' hands and on the field as possible to the graveyard. Then, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent for each card sent to the opponent's graveyard by this effect. You cannot activate other cards or effects during the turn you activate this card's effect? That's not right. Unfortunately, and maybe obviously to everyone, this card's had effect-changing errata. Not just that, but oof. It's a pretty bad one. That's where Kinetic Soldier was. I just read the most updated version of the card text, but for comparison, the original text is, this card can only be special summoned by removing 1 light and 1 dark monster in your graveyard from play. Pay 1,000 of your life points to send all cards in both players' hands and on the field to the graveyard. Inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent's life points for each card that is sent to the graveyard by this effect. Stat lineup hasn't changed. 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. This card is infamous for creating the Yada lock, and I just don't know if this was the right solution. It's not very well designed. Like, if you just got rid of the burn damage, it'd be a little bit better, but it's still a great disruption tool. I don't know why Black Rose Dragon is allowed to exist, but Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy at the end isn't? It doesn't quite make sense to me. I guess it's the hand disruption is just so different, but then we have Ocean Dragon Lord Neo Diabolus, but that card was never particularly good. I've been curious thinking back on it, but I wonder how many cards from this set in particular were banned limited at some point. A lot. A lot of cards are going to end up in design mistake or, that high. Played him a bit in MD/N/R Festival. Pretty decent beater. A truly horrible effect. Strong, but horrible. I think that the card is not in a great spot either. I think the errata is inelegant. And there's actually another solution that they tried, and I think that this is interesting, is that they sort of re-released it. They made Chaos Emperor the Dragon of Armageddon. Worst name. Dark attribute, level 8, same stats, but now it's a pendulum monster. The pendulum effect, you can pay 1,000 life points, then target one of your banished dragon-type monsters, destroy this card, and if you do, add that monster to your hand. You can only use this effect of Chaos Emperor the Dragon of Armageddon once per turn, so it's a hard once per turn. Then for the monster effect, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand or extra deck by banishing 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard. You can only special summon Chaos Emperor the Dragon of Armageddon, that name is so terrible, once per turn this way. Once per turn, you can pay half your life points, so much steeper cost. Send as many cards as you control as possible to the graveyard. So it hits your side first, except from the extra monster zone, which actually could make it a little bit better. You get to keep at least one big thing. And if you do, send cards your opponent controls to the graveyard up to the number of cards sent to the graveyard. Yikes. Then it still does the burn damage, inflict 300 points of damage for each card sent to the graveyard by this card's effect. If this face-up special summon card leaves the field, return it to the bottom of the deck, so it actually circumvents the way that normal pendulum monsters work. I don't know. And apparently it was a winner's promo when it was first released, making it even less useful. Oh, that's sad for the new Chaos Emperor. Anyway, we're not talking about that. I just thought it was interesting that this card got effect-changing errata and a retrain. It's obviously an important part of the game's legacy, and if you're playing in older formats and this card is legal, you're probably running it. I agree. The artwork from Mr. Metal on the Retrain is pretty good. But I'd say that the Konami artwork for most cards is pretty good. Like, I'm trying to think of an artwork I really dislike. And I might be thinking for a while. Instead, let's go ahead and move on with the list. I mentioned Ojamas earlier. They are always on my mind. Last set we had Ojama Green, and it was alluding to the other two that are in this set. We got Yellow and Black are both in this set. Yellow's on the screen right now. Light attribute, level 2, beast, normal. He's one of the Ojama trio. It said that he butts in at any means necessary. It's also said that when the three are together, something happens. 0 attack, 1000 defense. I don't know why I keep calling Ojama green Ojama yellow. I must be colorblind. Do we put in acceptable in archetype? Or do we put it in gimmick? Because there's actually something cooking when you get Oja Magic. Because Oja Magic is like a +2 and thins the deck by 3 cards and gives you tons of ammo for other things. I really like Oja Magic, but does it make Ojamas good is the question, or does it just add more bricks to your deck? And is adding bricks worth it? Like, at what point is card advantage, just the sheer number of cards, worth the inconsistency that's inherent with it? From Kuchito, acceptable in archetype, just not at the time of release. Interesting. No one's playing Ojamas in 2004, just letting you know. I think I'm just gonna keep him here for now. Let's go ahead and read the text for Ojama Black while you're here. It's the exact same. Light attribute, level 2, beast normal. He's one of the Ojama trio. It's said that he butts in by any means necessary. It's also said that when the three are together, something happens. 0 attack, 1000 defense. Interesting. Ojamas are usually the engine to make other strategies work, and playing off that, which archetype, Ojamas or the ABC cards? Man, I'm gonna make a Chaz deck one day. It's not gonna be good, but it's going to be fun. And that's good enough for me. Next up, Soul Tiger, Earth Attribute, level 4, Beast. The soul of a tiger that is said to devour human souls. So a cannibal? He is a famous soul that you wouldn't want to run into in a dark alley. Yeah. 0 attack, 2100 defense. I'm gonna just say that it's filler. This is the new strongest defense point card in the game. At least for level 4 monsters. Level 4s without downsides, but So, I think Battle Footballer is in this set too, but I think it's at a slightly higher rarity, which is why it's not here. Or maybe Battle Footballer is in the next set. I'm not sure. What? Slight upgrade over, like, the dragon dwelling in the cave, I guess. Is Photon Saber Tiger a reference to this? I don't know. That could be a coincidence. Is this the soul of the all-seeing tiger? That's a question, too. They don't have to censor Ojama Black. Next up, Big Koala. Earth attribute, level 7. Beast, normal. A species of huge, desk koala. He's meek, but people are afraid of him because he's very powerful. 2700 attack, 2000 defense. Is Master of Oz not in the set? I don't think it is. I don't know when Master of Oz is released, but the materials are right here, the big koala and the desk kangaroo. But you don't really play either of the materials when you bring out Master of Oz. Usually you just cheat it out with Cyberstein. At least at the time. I'm going to just keep it in bad for now. Next up, Desk Kangaroo. Dark attribute, level 4, Beast. If the attack of a monster that attacks this monster is lower than the defense of this card, destroy the attacking monster. 1500 attack, 1700 defense. And man, I love that artwork. It's got like 4 different unique poses. The artist had to draw Desk Koala or Desk Kangaroo 4 different times. That is some very nice effort. And the effect is okay. It's sort of like a different version of 1000 Needles, I want to say. Master of Oz in the next set, and Big Koala is silly in the best way. I just love its artwork. I think it's really cute. But I guess we'll do a favorite card artwork tier list at some point. Next up, Crimson Ninja with the red card text. Earth attribute, level 1. Warrior effect, or Warrior flip effect hasn't had the PTSC yet. Flip. Target 1 trap card on the field, destroy that target. If the target is set, reveal it and destroy it if it is a trap card. Otherwise, return it to its original position. 300 attack, 300 defense. So in Legend of Blue Eyes, there is Armed Ninja, and this is an Armed Ninja does this but for spell cards. So Crimson Ninja is just a counterpart to Armed Ninja, which is interesting because there was also Reaper of the Cards that has the same effect as this. But Reaper of the Cards was bad. It was like level 5 or 6, it required a tribute and had bad stats. And this card's a ninja, which actually means that it, sort of benefits from some of the ninja support. If you really wanted to, you could probably run a ninja deck in 2004 between this and the transformation spell or ninjutsu art of transformation. The effect's pretty good, actually. I'm actually going to put it in good on release. It's another tool that you could put in your warrior toolbox, and I like that. I agree. Desk Kangaroo, super dynamic. Hello, Rob S. Robs. Hello, all Robs in the chat. Next up, another ninja, Strike Ninja, and this card's great. Dark attribute, level 4, warrior effect. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can banish 2 dark monsters from your graveyard, banish this card face up until the end phase. 1700 attack, 1200 defense. This card is great because you can make it phase out for just long enough to dodge something. I don't think this is... Oh, it is a quick effect. It just doesn't have the quick effect text yet because it says during either player's turn. So you can actually dodge targeting removal with it. The other part of it is actually interesting. Since you do get to banish as a cost, you can clear out things from your graveyard. And that can also be useful when you're setting up for Dimension Fusion or Return from the Different Dimension. Dimension Fusion in this set, so it's actually pretty relevant. Probably the best ninja we got so far. It's also level 4, meaning that your transformation art is going to be able to get much higher level monsters as a result. Gotta love how the early ninjas were super utilitarian. That design kinda carried them into the full archetype. I agree. I think we see meta at one point a bit today. Oh, I get what you say. That it is top of meta at one point and maybe worth even considering now. Tagging out is really strong. I don't think it's quite as strong as, like, gladiator beasts, which properly tag out, but dodging is cool. And the artwork is just fantastic. It's not as good as Death Kangaroo, where the artist drew multiple cards, or multiple poses, but still, really nice. Next up, Gale Lizard. Water attribute, level 4, reptile, flip effect, flip. Target one monster your opponent controls, return that target to the hand. 1400 attack, 700 defense. We have Penguin Soldier, and this card isn't as good as Penguin Soldier. It's got some pluses over it. Like, you could search it with King of the Feral Imps. That's not really an upside. I think you just run Penguin Soldier or maybe Wall of Illusion. I like the idea of the card, though. I think it's pretty cool. Just not useful. First stream I'm catching live. Welcome, Rob. I love this format, man. Thank you. And your English is fantastic. Next up, I believe Pot of Greed is still at 1 at this point in 2004. So this card is not useless on release, but for that reason. It's useless on release for other reasons. Spirit of the Pot of Greed is a light attribute, level 1, fairy effect. Hey, you can actually special summon it from hand with one of the special fairy spells, but you don't want to. While this card is in attack position on the field, if a player activates Pot of Greed, they can draw one more card. I guess you could draw even more cards with Inferno Reckless Summon. It is symmetric, your opponent benefits from it. I don't like this card. I think it shouldn't exist. I think Avatar of the Pot and Spirit of the Pot of Greed are just not good. Card's pretty much unplayable now because you don't have Pot of Greed. Not Valhalla. There's actually a different one. Let me see if I can find it real quick. That's not where it is. Type fairy. Right here. It's called Court of Justice. Let me see if I can pull it up, though. Doing this live. We'll get it in the replay. The card's name is Court of Justice and has the text: during your main phase, you can special summon one fairy monster from your hand. You must control a level 1 fairy monster to activate and resolve this effect. But we'll get it later. Yeah, Court of Justice. Thank you, Hodge Otter. Avatar's still better, and I think it didn't eat up the normal summon. You could use Valhalla. It is a diviner target, and you could use Photon Lead to get it out of hand. There's also a Watt Kinetic Psychic Fighter if you wanted to do that one too. Yeah, they teased the Ojamas before their time. Next up, Chopman, the Desperate Outlaw. Dark Attribute, level 3, Zombie, effect. When this card is flip summoned, you can equip one equip spell card in your graveyard to this card. 1100 attack, 500 defense. This card's cool, at least, but it's not great. I'm a little surprised that this card didn't make it into Dark Crisis, now that I think of it, because it deals with equip spells. Why does it only trigger on flip summon? That's so weird. This guy is a really cool reference to the manga, though, where there's a chainsaw-wielding maniac and Joey's trapped in a room with him. That's why he's called Chopman. You're just not going to use him. I heart Chop. In terms of lore, though, Chopman, very important. Like, he's the reason that Impachi is dead, and then came back as Woodborg or Charcoal Impachi. So, next up, Sasuke Samurai number 3. The last Sasuke Samurai we saw in Dark Crisis ended up in Worth Considering Today. Does that hold true for this one? Light Attribute, level 3, Warrior effect. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent's life points, your opponent draws cards until their hand has 7 cards? 1000 attack, 1000 defense. Hypothetically, you could give it to your opponent with Xian's Spy, or Creature Swap, or a few other things, and then just keep crashing into it, but it doesn't have much attack. Ooh, calls from the chat to put Chopman in very bad just because the condition is so hard. I can agree with that. Yeah. I think if you're playing the card honestly, Sasuke Samurai number 3 goes in very bad. But if you wanted to try to do something with it, it could be a really strong draw engine. You can use this card with Retort. There's also Heavy Slump, I think, it's either Heavy Slump or Bubble Crash that you can use with this card and mess with your opponent's hand. I don't like it. Oh, we have Heavy Slump, yeah. It is the lesser Bistro Butcher. No, it's better than Bistro Butcher. We got a bit of disappointing addition to the Sasukes. I can agree with that. Next up, I want to point out... Nope. Where are you? I am labeling these next time. There we go. I want to actually point out the artwork on this card. For some reason, it's got like this weird solar panel lagging behind it, and I don't know why. And it confuses me. And I don't think that this is intentional, but what it really reminds me of is this Japanese card called the Daedric, because it's got the same eye shape and then the vestigial foot on it. I think I'm probably the only one that makes this connection. But I find it weird and fascinating. Just the artwork for this card. That solar panel is in the card artwork. It's just hard to see because it's blue and the portal is blue. But let's focus on the important parts. Yeah, the Dedrick. When are we getting this card in the TCG? The eyeball has hair. Yep. I saw this thing in one of the Beckett unofficial collector magazines back in the day, and it has been on my mind for a really long time since then. The thing is disturbing and cool, and actually one of my favorite parts of old Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a little bit of nightmare fuel. So, let's get it off the screen though. Back to DD Scout Plane. Dark Attribute, level 2, Machine, effect, once per turn during the end phase. If this card is currently banished, and was banished this turn, special summon it in attack position. 800 attack, 1200 defense. This card has had errata, making it a once per turn effect. I don't think that actually puts it into game breaking or takes it from up to being a design mistake, but the card is really good. All the way up to meta at one point, but if you twist my arm, it might even go higher to worth considering today. You can make this card into a +1 if you're already running cards like Allure of Darkness. There's a lot of ways that you can just end up getting this card to give you free advantage. The problem is it's slow. It's during the end phase, which isn't bad, but it's just not fast enough to be a combo extender or to really benefit you. I remember using Gale Lizard in one of the games. I think Dual Generations. Interesting. I suppose the DD planes are just meant for space-faring vessels like satellites and starships. I don't know what the different dimension lore is. It's really cool, though. Survivor in the later set. Oh yeah, so DD Survivor much better. Good night, Rob. Next up, Berserk Gorilla. Earth Attribute, level 4. Beast effect. If this card is in face-up defense position, destroy this card. This card must attack if able. 2000 attack, really good for the time. 1000 defense. This card is great. It's a shame to me that this card isn't Fire Attribute. If this card was Fire Attribute, it'd be so much better in my opinion, because then you could put it in your Fire King deck, because it would self-destruct, and then you'd get your destruction triggers. You still get your destruction triggers, and it does have the right type, but it doesn't have the right attribute. I think it'd be fair to say that Berserk Gorilla could be a fire type because it's breathing fire. Ooh, I am Berserk Gorilla. He is monkey. The real application for Berserk Gorilla is probably with a skill drain deck. You're running this card, and you're running Zombira the Dark. Just cards with big attack points. Goblin Attack Force. He's just that man, and that's why he's breathing fire. Okay. That explanation is acceptable. Next up, Freed the Brave Wanderer. Light attribute, level 4, warrior, effect. Once per turn, you can remove from play 2 light monsters in your graveyard to destroy 1 face-up monster on the field with higher attack than this card. This is fantastic. Freed another great lore card, and I just realized that this card is like a mirror image of Strike Ninja, where they both banish lights and darks from your graveyard for beneficial effects. I guess Strike Ninja is selfish and protects himself, and Freed is selfless and offers removal. But he's also chivalrous and won't just break or destroy weaker monsters. I don't know. Really cool lore. A level 4 freed. What happened to him? Oh, he got demoted. He's no longer a general. His feint plan didn't work so well, and then he got demoted. Or maybe the marauding captain did it. I don't know. This is in reference to the older Freed the Matchless General, which allowed you to top deck warrior monsters during your draw phase. For anyone that's missing the reference. I think he's a lot better as a level 4, just putting it out there. Maybe it's not related to rank within the military. I don't know. 5-star general makes more sense. Next up, Coach Goblin, which is potentially also second Goblin. I'm not sure if this card is the same as the one that is taming the crazy beast, or the one that's behind Giant Orc. I'm not sure about the Goblin lore. So we got a suggestion that Freed the Brave Wanderer is before he becomes the Matchless General, that this is a younger incarnation because he has no mustache. I love that explanation. Iskandar Haggerty? But back to Coach Goblin. This is a goblin, and there is a goblin archetype, but that's not going to save it. Earth attribute, level 4, Fiend effect. While this card is face up on the field, you can return one normal monster card in your hand to the bottom of the deck during your end phase to draw one card from your deck. You can only use this effect once per turn. 1200 attack, 1500 defense. It's not as good as Lighten the Load. Lighten the Load helps unbrick your hand. This requires normal monsters. It is draw power, but it is too slow to be impactful. That being said, maybe you are actually benefiting from this card on release, where you might just be running some normal monsters and unbricking your hand on a slow monster. But then you'd have to normal summon it or tutor it out with Giant Rat. It's Earth for some reason, not Dark. Not sure. I'm not disappointed by the card, but I think it could have been better. Next up, Witch Doctor of Chaos. Dark attribute, level 2, spellcaster, flip effect, flip. Select one monster card from you or your opponent's graveyard. From you or your opponent's graveyard, that's a typo. Should probably be your graveyard. You or your opponent. That is so weird. Select one monster card from you or your opponent's graveyard. Maybe it is right. Remove it from play. 500 attack, 500 defense. The only reason that this card is a little bit viable is that you could potentially bring it out with Apprentice Magician. So you go Apprentice Magician into the Witch Doctor of Chaos, and then it's a bit of a disruption tool, and that's not bad. Are you playing it as a disruption tool? Keep in mind there's no DD Crow at this point, so that is way far in the future. In terms of disrupting your opponent's graveyard, I guess you got Soul Release. I don't know. It's interesting. We got Marco Aurelio Fernandez Reyes. Can you share the results of the tier list? By this, I mean the final image of the tier list. I can see previous well, and I missed the previous live streams. Thanks. Maybe. If I remember to do it at the end of the live stream, I will save it for later use. I'm not sure if I have the previous one saved already. It's been a full year, unfortunately. The one from the week before last week, I might have that one too. Going forward, I will make an effort to do that. Thank you for the suggestion. I guess you could use Dimension Jar. That is another way to disrupt the graveyard, but I think there's better options still. Next up, Chaos Necromancer. Dark attribute, level 1, Fiend effect. The attack of this monster is the number of monster cards in your graveyard times 300. 0 attack, 0 defense. This card is sort of like, Goblin King, where it could function as a win condition, but you need to get a lot of monsters in the graveyard. I think it's cute. I guess you could camouflage armor and then start wailing on your opponent with a really high attack level 1 monster. It's better than Shadow Ghoul. It's pretty cool. I think I've seen it somewhere. I think it deserves good on release. How many monsters do you need engraved to make this decent? Probably 7. Can you get 7 monsters? Yeah, probably. Next up, Chaos Rider Gustav. Wind attribute, level 4. Warrior effect. Once per turn, you can remove from play up to 2 spell cards from your graveyard. This card gains 300 attack for each card removed until the end of your opponent's next turn. 1400 attack, 1500 defense. So that could go all the way up to 2000. It's interesting that it's spell cards specifically. Like, those are some of your most powerful cards. Banishing monsters at this point, way less impactful than banishing your one-of spell that you'd probably want to be using with Magician of Faith. Probably not running spell reproduction, but maybe magical stone excavation in a little bit. I think it's fine. I think if you're pulling it off of Reinforcement of the Army, then that's 1 spell engrave, and then you could get another spell engrave from earlier in the game. Got a suggestion that Chaos Necromancer could be a one-off as a tomato target. Interesting. I like that application. Next up, we have 4 retrains of our elemental spirits, starting out with Inferno. Fire attribute, level 4, Pyro effect, cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 fire monster from your graveyard. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict 1500 damage to your opponent. That's a lot of damage. On the other hand, this only has 1100 attack. So it's sort of like Spirit Reaper. When it gets in, it gets some value, but it's got to get in. 1900 defense, which is actually really good. I like how this card is sort of an inversion of the Spirit of Flames with an upgraded effect. Are you running this card over Spirit of Flames, though, is the question. And I don't know. If the stats were flipped and it had 1900 attack, it would be way too strong. Got a reference to Air Gear. Ooh. The anime is crazy. Next up, Fenrir. Water attribute, level 4, Beast effect. This might be the only other water beast at this point. I know there's Mother Grizzly. Mother Grizzly might be a beast warrior. Anyway, Beast effect. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by removing from play 2 water monsters in your graveyard. So it's a little bit more expensive. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, your opponent skips their next draw phase. 1400 attack, 1200 defense. This card's pretty infamous for denying your opponent drawing. Any card that denies your opponent from drawing cards can be pretty scary. I could definitely see an argument to put it in Gimmick if your deck revolves around that. Maybe flooding your opponent with Ojama tokens and then attacking over them, but I think it's just gonna go into filler. What kills the card for me is just having to banish 2. 2 is so much more difficult than just a single water monster engrave. I believe, yeah, out of the set, this is the only one that needs to banish 2. I don't know why. I guess I do realize why, that they had to break the symmetry just because of that. And all the battle damage that you inflict that turn is equal to the result times 200. Interesting. Air gear. I had this idea for a car where you roll 2 dice and all battle damage that you inflict during that turn is equal to the result times 200. That is weird. It's an interesting suggestion, though. Oh, we skipped Gigantes. Next up, Gigantes. Earth attribute, level 4, rock, effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 earth monster from your graveyard. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, destroy all spell and traps on the field. This card is great. You're probably not running it for that destruction effect, being completely honest. But the destruction effect's not bad. I think this is just a pretty generic combo extender, and specifically one that you could use because it's rock attribute and level 4. I believe it's searchable with one of the extra deck monsters. And it does have the 1900 attack that Inferno lacks. Next up, Sylphid. Wind attribute, level 4, fairy, effect. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by removing from play 1 wind monster in your graveyard. When this card is destroyed as a result of battle and sent to the graveyard, your opponent discards 1 random card from their hand. 1700 attack, 700 defense. That effect's real good, but again, it's on a destruction trigger. A destruction by battle trigger, so even worse. Very interesting, the design that they chose with these cards. Where you got one that just burns for an obscene amount. You got one that has time seals, so a broken effect. Then you got one that is heavy storm. And then you got one that's just take 1 card out of your opponent's hand. I think the spiritual wind art might actually do that, now that I think of it. Or is it the spiritual water art that pulls a card out of your opponent's hand? Gigantes saw a lot of play in Adamancer when Black Dragon was legal. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad that you're here too, Paul Duke. Next up, Chaos Sorcerer. Dark attribute, level 6, spellcaster effect, cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard. Once per turn, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, banish that target. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. 2300 attack, 2000 defense. This is just real good removal. There is a point in the game where I believe this card had priority, so you could activate it during the summoning window, and we're not going to worry about priority. Just get that out of your head. I think this card right now is not bad as a generic combo extender in a chaos deck. You do want some monsters that are banishing just to pull off your combos. I think its removal option is still pretty good if you're going second. But the ceiling for the card, I'm not sure where it is. I think you're probably better off running Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning in a lot of cases, but it does have enough different characteristics that it's worth considering. Level 6, Spellcaster, there's some nice Xyz plays that you could go in with it. Got confirmation that the water spiritual does discard and the wind spins to the top. No, actually to the bottom of the deck. Thank you. Next up, Grin Maju de Isa. Fire attribute, level 3, Fiend effect. This card's attack and defense become the number of banished cards times 400. And of course it starts with question mark, attack and defense. This card's a win condition, but to me, I find it super interesting. It's one of the very few non-light, non-dark Fiend monsters. So it's a tour bus target. And I think that's cute. No, not tour bus. Tour Bus to Forbidden Realms, I think is the name of the card. But this card is a win condition. And it's not bad in that role. Just big monster attack real strong. Sometimes that's all you need. Next up, Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. Light attribute, level 8, warrior effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing one light and one dark monster from your graveyard. Once per turn, you can activate one of these effects. Target one monster on the field, banish it. This card cannot attack the turn that this effect is activated. So, that's the Chaos Sorcerer effect. Then the second effect. If this attacking card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it can make a second attack in a row. That's good. That's some value. Just the way that you get such great decision making on this card. Do I want to attack? Do I want to attack twice? Or do I want to banish? It is targeting removal, but man, I think if you're willing to consider Chaos Sorcerer in today, you're definitely willing to consider Blackluster Soldier. There is a lot of BLS support out there too. So, and what is it? Evening Soldier, there's Super Soldier, there's a whole Blackluster Soldier archetype. I'm not talking about that at the moment. I think in general Chaos decks, you still might be running this card today. So, here comes the boy. I wonder who the boy is. Grin Maju's body always weirded me out. I think it's cool. I like Nightmare Fuel. BLS way better than Sorcerer? Yeah. But still, it can't make a rank 6 with BLS. You synchro climb in different ways with BLS than you would with Chaos Sorcerer. There's about 7 different Blackluster Soldiers. That sounds about right. Next up, Dralago. Dark attribute, level 4, machine, effect. If the only card your opponent controls are face-up monsters with 1600 or more attack, this card can attack your opponent directly. 1600 attack, and 1100 defense. The card's fine. It's actually pretty similar to a whole bunch of other cards. I think Shadow Slayer has another conditional attack directly effect, and Black Tyranno in the set also has a conditional attack directly effect. BLS is the boy. Thank you. From Rain McKnight, have you ever thought about reading audiobooks? Yes. It's just finding the time for that is hard. But public domain books especially. Next up, Lekunga. Lekunga? Lekunga. I love this card's artwork. Water attribute, level 4, plant, effect. You can banish 2 water monsters from your graveyard. Special summon 1 Lekunga token. Plant, water, level 2, attack 700, defense 700, in attack position. This card has 1700 attack, 500 defense, and I think everyone knows where this is going. Like right here. This is a token generator. Tokens are amazing. You can link climb with this. You just need to build your deck around it. Nimble Otter, or Nimble decks in general, love this card. But there's a lot of different water decks that focus on swarming, filling the graveyard, frogs especially. And you convert all that into different token advantage. And with the tokens, you start linking up, you start synchroing, you start doing stuff with the tokens. It's great. I think this card is worth considering. It's also a Lonefire Blossom target, so the card's very splashable. Of course, Lonefire is fire attribute, and this is water attribute, so maybe there's something going on with that too. I don't know. Lukunga, easy recommendation in my book. Next up, Lord Poison, another water attribute plant. Level 4, effect. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target one plant-type monster in your graveyard except Lord Poison. Special summon that target. 1500 attack, 1000 defense. The card's pretty good. This is just a plant version of Agido, but better. And I think that that's really strong. For the time. Keep in mind, for the time. I think that I've never seen this card in a meta deck, but I like it a lot. Next up, Boganian. Dark attribute, level 3, machine effect. Once per turn, during your standby phase, inflict 600 damage to your opponent. 1300 attack, 1000 defense. This thing's not going to survive unless you're under like Gravity Bind or Level Limit Area B, and I guess it's a win condition, but there is a much better option in this set. That being said, next is Granadora. Water attribute, level 4, reptile, effect. When this card is normal summoned, flip summoned, or special summoned. So, a lot of different options. Increase your life points by 1000 points. Unfortunately, when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you take 2000 points of damage. 1900 attack, fantastic. 700 defense, very decent. It needs to be destroyed in order for you to take that damage, and there's a lot of ways that you can avoid that. You can bounce it to hand, you can synchro with it, you can Xyz summon with it, you can link with it, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. The question becomes, is this card good enough to run on its own? Or is that effect impactful enough to be considering this card? I think the fact that this card can backfire is probably going to just put it in filler outclassed. Gaining life points is not a great effect. And it's like water reptile. So where are you going to even put it? Next up, Fuma Shuriken. Spell? Equip spell, actually. Equip only to a ninja monster. It gains 700 attack. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, inflicts 700 damage to your opponent. This card has an interesting interaction with Reversal Quiz specifically. You get your opponent's life points down to like 500. You set this card, you activate Reversal Quiz, you guess correctly, you swap life points with your opponent, and then you win the game. I don't think you're ever running this on your ninja cards. It is super interesting that Strike Ninja's in this card's artwork. Because you equip it to Strike Ninja, then Strike Ninja phases out, then that means that this card goes to the graveyard and it does the burn damage. So you actually do get a little bit of value. It's halfway between Ukazi and Final Flame. But I don't think that that's particularly useful. I do like equip cards that do more than just lightning rod, make your opponent blow up your monster. And I think that this is a good attempt, except that it's burn damage. Next up, Heart of the Underdog. Continue a spell. During your draw phase, when you draw a normal monsters, you can reveal it, draw one more card. That means that if you draw a normal monster, it's still during your draw phase, so you can draw another card. And if you draw another card, and it's another normal, then you can draw another card. I like how this card specifies if you draw monsters, because I think there's like a few effects in the game that allow you to draw more than one card at a time during your draw phase, and Guarded Treasure comes to mind. Hypothetically, this card is useful, but it's too slow to be actual draw support. We have a place for this, and it's just historical gimmick. The card is really cool, though. I like it. Or I like the way that I think it's supposed to read. Because drawing a normal monster, not the greatest thing. Getting extra draw power, pretty useful. Next up, Wild Nature's Release. Target one beast or beast warrior monster. It gains attack equal to its current defense until the end phase, and if it does, it is destroyed during the end phase. You can actually circumvent that downside in certain decks, or you can benefit from that downside in certain decks. I think that that's really interesting. If you're running this in your Gladiator Beast deck, you gotta be careful because Gladiator Beast types are all over the place. But since they tag out, you're not going to get it blown up during the end phase, and that's pretty cool. On the other hand, if you're running this in like your Fire King deck, maybe you do want it to self-destruct. I don't know if it's worth considering today, but I like it so much that it might be. Doesn't Berserk Gorilla have 0 defense? Let me check. Berserk Gorilla has 1000 defense. So it would go up to 3000. Ooh, very interesting that you could put it on your opponent's monster from randoming Nope, specifically in a Beast or Beast Warrior mirror match, and it functions as a removal. That's interesting. Berserk Gorilla does benefit from it and go up to 3000 attack, which, that makes sense. Next up, Ojama Delta Hurricane. Double exclamation mark. Normal spell, if you control Ojama Green, Ojama Yellow, and Ojama Black, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Asymmetric field wipe. This is not a drill. The Ojamas have assembled. I don't think you even run this in your Ojama deck. Like, there are ways that you can get out all 3 Ojamas, and I don't think it's worth it. I wouldn't run it. I'd run the Ojamas just for raw card advantage. But I can see, if you want to, it fits into the archetype. If you want to put it in gimmick, you can. And if you want to put it in very bad, that's fine too. I love Heart of the Underdog Exodia. Oh no. It's so fun with Ignites. Okay, I can agree with Ignites with Heart of the Underdog, but not Exodia. Exodia bad. This is one of the 12 cards that have double exclamation mark in their title? Interesting. Very excited. Branch might have double exclamation mark, but I can't think of any. Maybe Maybe like monster attacks, maybe dark magic attack has double exclamation mark. I don't know. Maybe you play Ojama Delta Hurricane in the side specifically against back row decks. Interesting. You can use it in Diamond Dude Turbo. Oh, right, because then you wouldn't have to meet the condition. It's just a field wipe. I'm going to say that that's a gimmick. Next up, Stumbling. And I actually got the OCG artwork for here because the story of Gagigo's censorship is so interesting. Because like half the time in the TCG, he's got the TCG shorts on, and half the time he doesn't. And I don't know if they just missed it in certain cards, but it's so inconsistent. It's really interesting to me. When is the whole video on Gagigo's TCG shorts coming out? I don't know. Hurricane assumes that you want to keep the Ojamas on the field. Big mistake. No, you do. You want him long enough for Hurricane. And apparently Matt is a mage, coming with the great own. None of the cards that I mentioned have the double exclamation mark. I'm just too excited by them. Gagigo confirmed 2 lewd for Konami. No, it's lore. He just keeps losing his shorts. Ooh, what if Mr. Metal's onto something? That the shorts are specifically symbolizing his struggle with his humanity and his beast side, or his falling into darkness? I don't know. That'd be really, really interesting. Maybe April Fool's video material. But we should probably talk about what the card does. Completely forgot about it. Too distracted by, Gagigo. Artwork's really cool, though. I just love the skull that's biting him. Continue a spell. As long as this card remains face up on the field, any monster that is summoned, flip summoned, or special summoned successfully is changed to defense position. Card's pretty cool. It's sort of like... there's a later card called Iceborne, but it's sort of like a very old version of Lose One Turn. There's some gimmick potential with this card too, because you could just summon monsters and then activate Guard Penalty. And then Guard Penalty is just a free draw at that point. Potentially you run a 37 card deck. The equip spell version, Gagigo shorts. Equip only to Gagigo. They are not shifted to defense position permanently. It is just, they can be changed by card effect or by changing the battle positions during the appropriate time during your turn. This isn't stay in defense mode. Stumbling was meta with clown control. Interesting. I agree that it's definitely been meta. You use it in stall decks. But I think it's pretty interesting. Oh, I get it in clown control specifically because it'd shift the position of your clowns so that you could get the train rolling faster. I like that. Next up, Chaos End. Normal spell, you can only activate this if 7 or more cards are currently removed from play. Destroy all monster cards on the field. This is mass removal. And it's pretty good mass removal. Condition, little hard, but your games are going a lot longer, and you got a ton of ways to be banishing cards in this format. I don't think you're running this today because you're not really running Dark Hole or Raigeki over Lightning Storm and evenly matched. But the card's really good for the time. Of course Gagigo can ice skate. It's part of the lore. It's confirmed. Next up, This card is actually a Chaos card. This is Chaos Shield in Japanese, but for some reason it got translated to Yellow Luster Shield. I guess they saw the artwork on it and then just made the connection. Maybe they just didn't have the foresight for Chaos cards being an archetype or Chaos being a specific keyword in the future. Anyway, continuous spell. Increase the defense of all monsters on your side of the field by 300 points. This card's useless. Like so bad. Next up, Chaos Greed. Normal spell. You can only activate this card if 4 or more of your cards are currently removed from play, and there are no cards in your graveyard. Draw 2 cards from your deck. I think Chaos Greed is both fantastic and tricky to use. And boy, oh boy. But first, we got a lovely comment that the artwork for Chaos Shield is literally taking the black and white scan from the manga and coloring it yellow. Someone at Konami with their highlighter. I finished the card artwork. I love that. Thank you, Mr. Metal. I also got the combo that Shield works really well with Wild Nature's release. Don't agree with that one, though. Back to Chaos Greed. Condition really hard because you gotta clear out your graveyard. But there are ways that you can do it. And I think it's worth mentioning... Where are you? Not you. Not you. Where are you? Where are the ways to clear your graveyard? Nope. Nope. Found it. There we go. There are ways that you can set up this. So you want Banisher of the Light, Banisher of the Radiance. Those are obvious ones that will banish your cards as they leave. Another interesting one, though, is Dimension Shifter. But then you'd have to get Dimension Shifter out of your graveyard. Dimension Fisher, but that's only for monsters. And then on top of that, Macrocosmos, all cards. And finally, the most interesting option, I think, is Ruddy Rose Dragon. Because that will just clear your graveyard flat out. I think a combination of like Dimension Shifter and then returning it to hand with something like Dark Eruption or banishing it for the Dark Spirit, or maybe, is it the Buster Dragon or the Collapse Serpent? One of the dragon ones could potentially be a useful combo. The problem with Shifter is, yes, it will get your cards banished, but then you got to get the Shifter out of the graveyard, which is a little tricky. Keeping your graveyard empty is very difficult, I agree. We got a suggestion that Flowrandries can use it And I can agree with that. I think that this card is really cool. Specifically with Dimension Shifter, though, you're going to be banishing the Chaos Greed as it goes to the graveyard, which means if you have multiple copies or if you draw another Chaos Greed, it's instantly online. So this could just be Pot of Greed in the right deck. Do we have confirmation that there's a new Dimension Fisher coming out at some point? I think it's worth considering today. And maybe that's ranking it too high, but I think the card's really good. I think draw 2 cards cannot be overestimated or underestimated. Simple, but I think you can start cooking with it. You're probably not running one of the Banisher cards. You might be running the Macrocosmos in your deck anyway, but running Dimension Shifter, that card's really meta right now. So you might be running that one just naturally, and a rank 10 Synchro Monster isn't what every deck can make. Or a level 10 Synchro Monster isn't what every deck can make, but it's still not that hard. Banisher doesn't work with cards that are already there. I agree with that. I think it's a puzzle. Every day that Ruddy Rose doesn't see play, I get more confused. Going into it with Excel Stardust is so good. Yeah. I do want to point out that those cards that I mentioned earlier are going to come up later, just because that condition of having cards banished and your graveyard clear is shared with, I think, 1 or 2 more cards in this set. Next up, DD Designator. Normal spell, declare 1 card name. Look at your opponent's hand, and if he or she has the declared name in his or her hand, remove that 1 card from play. If he or she doesn't have the declared card in his or her hand, remove 1 random card from your hand from play. Whew. This card's artwork is great. DD Warrior Lady in such a dynamic pose. I don't know why her sword glows like a lightsaber, but I think it's really cool. This card is great. Sort of. If you have a good natural hard read on your opponent, this card can just remove hand traps. This card can backfire though. It's sort of like Mind Crush, but faster and stronger than Mind Crush. Mind Crush takes out multiple copies, but boy is the risk higher. Instead of discarding a card from your hand, it banishes a card from your hand. That's bad. You end up going -2, but you do get to see your opponent's hand. If you're working with perfect information, like if you're running Feng Sheng Mirror just to look at your opponent's hand, you might be using DD Designator. It's really good in the recent Master Duel event. Interesting. Oh, because everyone started with respect play on the field. That's dirty. But yeah, DD Designator. It is another way to play around your opponent's hand traps. But oof. Are you taking that risk, or are you running ways to naturally mitigate it? But what if you have no cards in hand? Ooh. I don't know if you're allowed to activate it if you have no cards in hand. Maybe you are. Next up, DD Borderline. Continue a spell. While there are no spell cards in your graveyard, so you can have monsters and traps, neither player can conduct their battle phase. This card's just bad. I don't like it for what it does to the game. It just stops attacking. It's easy to get rid of though, except we're starting to get less and less removal. I think Mystical Space Typhoon goes to 1 pretty soon, so it is actually a little hard to keep this around. or to actually start popping spells and traps. I guess you got Breaker, but I don't see this card surviving for very long, and I don't see it being particularly useful if you are. But the lore on this card. We got Freed, we got Kagigo, very nice artwork. The blue stuff, we got the blue portal from DD Scout Plane. Next up, Recycle. Continuous spell. During your standby phase, pay 300 life points to select one non-monster card in your graveyard. Return it to the bottom of your deck. Why does this card take so long to work? Why does this card cost life points? Why can't you recycle monsters? Why is this card so bad? We got some comments on DD Borderline being somewhat useful. Dragged out a game to 70 turns. That's a really long time. Great lore, I agree. Great for stall and burn. And only good if your opponent lacks back row removal. I agree with that. I think Recycle might be so weak because Regrowth and Magic was banned. Because it circumvented the ban list in Magic. I don't know. I really think that Recycle could have just been once per turn and during your main phase. I don't know. I don't think the card needs a retrain, but it's a little sad. If Recycle did work as many times as you wanted it, you could very quickly empty your graveyard though, and that would make it pretty useful for cards like Chaos Greed, but I guess we don't need to be thinking about how to fix Recycle at this point. Next up, Primal Seed. If Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning or Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy at the end, but for most of the history of the game it was just BLS, is on the field, target 2 of your banished cards. Add both those targets to your hand. This card is super infamous because it's loopy. You get a Banisher on the field, and then when this card is... when this card would go to the graveyard, it gets banished. So if you have multiple copies, then you can just recycle Primal Seed over and over again, and then that causes loops. One of the YouTube combo centerpieces, yeah. But there's other loops that you can do with it too. I think that this is a pretty infamous way to use to loop for game with cards like Demock, Dimensional Fizzer, Dimension Fusion, Tribute to Burn card like Mass Driver. There's a lot of things that you can do with Primal Seed. It was also limited for a really long time. I agree with that. The idea behind it's pretty cool. That you can use Primal Seed and get back the material that you just banished. The fact that you could loop is probably the reason why the card's so strong, though, is that you can loop it with other copies of itself. And as a result, it's at 1. I like it. I think it's cool. I don't think you should be using it, though, for integrity reasons. Next up, Thunder Crash. Normal spell, destroy all monsters you control. Oof. And if you do, inflict 300 points of damage for each monster destroyed. I don't like this card. It is just a terrible waste of card advantage, board presence. The burn damage is super mediocre. It's a Tribute to Burn card, which I already dislike. Correction, it's not Tribute to Burn, it's Destruction to Burn, but I think if it weren't so bad, this card might be problematic. If it was dealing like 1,000 points for each monster destroyed, then this card would cause problems. But the ceiling is so low, and the cost is just so high. Awesome name though, Thunder Crash. I can agree with that. Nope. Dinosaur card. Next up, Dimension Distortion. Normal spell, you can only activate this card if there are no cards in your graveyard. Select one removed from play monster and special summon it to your side of the field. So this is the... Actually, it's less restrictive than the Chaos Greed condition. Potentially, this card is just better version of Different Dimension Reincarnation. Doesn't have a discard cost, doesn't equip itself, doesn't ask that many questions, but boy, you got one big hoop to jump through instead of several smaller hoops. I can't put it higher than Filler Outclassed. I can see a use for it. I can even see somewhat meta use, maybe in Psychic decks or Ritual Beast or something that just likes banishing. Maybe in a Clear Your Own Graveyard. It's a Raphael card. I agree with that. Maybe in your Guardian Yados deck. Maybe it works with Madolche, maybe, because Madolche don't usually end up in the graveyard. I don't know. I think it's cool. I wish it were better. Next up, Reload. Quick play spell, add all cards from your hand to your deck and shuffle it. Then draw the same number of cards that you added to your deck. I am currently investigating Reload and Magical Mallet, but more specifically Magical Mallet, because I think it is really interesting. Like, obviously this card is a -1, but it's also hand fixing. But is it even worth running is the question. It shuffles your whole hand back, so if you had any combo pieces at all, you better set them or summon them before you activate it. But this does boost your ability, your consistency. But is it worth the -1? But if you're shuffling Ojama's back, then that's potentially useful. Reload has a very funny interaction with Heart of the Underdog because it's a quick play. Interesting. I guess you could activate Reload, draw the normal monsters, draw additional cards during your draw phase. That is pretty useful. Sort of like Super Rejuvenation or Greed Grotto. It could be a design mistake, as it just fits into FTK decks as an enabler. I can agree with that. Is it good though, is the question. Like, is it even worth considering? And I don't know. It's really interesting to me. When I get to the probability video, because this Reload and to a lesser extent Magical Mallet might actually be worth the card disadvantage. Especially if you're going +1 or +2, like Oja Magic off of card destruction or hand destruction, and then you're running Reload. It's not really making it useful, but it is really interesting to me. Being a quick play spell theoretically makes it harder for your opponent to hand trip cards you need, at the cost of losing the cards for yourself as well. Interesting. Hand rip cards you need. Oh, interesting. It is used in FTK decks like Magical Library or Scientist. Is consistency worth card advantage? There's so much detail and so much discussion about this one little card. Reload and Magical Mallet always feel bad to play though, because the chance to redraw cards that you threw back into your deck. I agree. Randomization and paper is terrible. Like really, really bad. Randomization in digital is also pretty bad. It depends on how it's seeded and how the randomness is actually generated. But in paper, yeah, paper shuffling is not good. I think we're just going to keep it in gimmick for now, for reload, but it is really interesting to me. I think right now, you're probably not playing reload for other reasons, like Troll and Lockbird or Ash Blossom or other cards that could interfere with it. But for a time, though, it might have been a viable strategy. Next up, Soul Absorption. And I think gimmick is fair? Are you running Soul Absorption reasonably? Or are you just running this to gain a whole bunch of life points in a loop? What does the card do? Continue a spell. If a card is banished, gain 500 life points for each. So this is if, not when, so you're not missing the timing. And you can banish a lot of cards. Like, could you imagine Inferno Tempest going off and you banishing every monster in your opponent's deck and your deck? That's a lot of life points. But then you gotta win without monsters. We should have a section that's just devoted for cards which are good when end of match timed procedures are going on. Interesting. Yeah, there's no once per turn on Soul Absorption, so you could be gaining a lot of life points. I can't think of a good way to loop it, but there probably is one. Soul Absorption is bad, but it's always funny when you gain a bunch of life points from Pot of Desires. Ooh, that's another one. Just gain 5,000 life points off of Pot of Desires. That's a lot of life points. If you're playing Aromages, that's enough to start really getting the ball rolling. But gaining life points doesn't really advance your game state. At best, it buys you more time. And I just don't see that being useful enough to warrant the card being used. Next up, Big Burn. Normal Trap. You can only activate this card when an opponent activates a card that targets a monster in the graveyard. Remove from play all monsters in both players' graveyards. This card's just great side deck tech in a lot of different formats. You run Big Burn just to mess with your opponent's graveyard. Well, maybe just to mess with your opponent in general. I think that there is a tiny bit of potential considering that Big Burn is a normal trap. So maybe you're using it with Wannabe or what is it? The Labyrinth Butler? Labyrinth Butler. Because then you could activate it directly from your hand during your opponent's first turn. That could be potentially useful. They really just called it Big Burn. Amazing. Well, what would you call it? Inferno's already taken. In the set, even. Got Soul Absorption turning Pot of Desires from a -9 to a positive 4,991. Which is some very dubious math. I think Big Burn possibly is useful today, but trap cards aren't useful today is the problem. I know there are definitely circumstances where they are, but generally speaking, I haven't seen very many. Cards were used to try to make Grin Maju work before Stromberg/Desires were a thing. Oh yeah, Golden Castle is Stromberg. That's another strong card. Next up, Blasting the Ruins. Normal trap. You can only activate this card if there are 30 or more cards in your graveyard. It's a pretty high bar to clear. Inflict 3,000 points of damage to your opponent's life points. You run this card in FTK decks, and I guess pseudo FTK decks, with sometimes they use like Magical Explosion. The strategy is draw a whole bunch of cards and then end with Blasting the Ruins or Magical Explosion. Just cycling through with Call of the Void and Dark World Dealings and a whole bunch of other cards. Otherwise, you are not running through 30 cards in normal gameplay. Usually. I guess maybe you could run it with Reasoning and not a lot of targets in your deck, but I think Gimmick is just pretty safe. That is a lot of damage. 3,000 life points, you need 3 copies, and you win the game. Firestorm's a good name for Big Burn. I like that. Unban Makura, and you will see traps becoming meta. Makura can never come off the ban list without serious effect-changing errata. If it were just once per turn, it would probably be too weak because it'd basically be the Labyrinth Butler, but without the ability to activate itself. So that's not great. On the other hand, if you make it any more than one, then it's going to have some really degenerate play coming. Like just Reckless Greed, Legacy of Yatagarasu, the Great Inversion, Jara Greed. There's so many cards that can just deck then. Makura is already... Yeah, Makura is hard once per turn. Sorry. I messed up tense. But yeah, Makura could not come back in its previous form. And now it's from field to grave too. I missed that part. That makes it really sad. I think one trap from hand wouldn't have been that bad because we got Temple of the Kings that allows you to activate one trap from hand. We got the Labyrinth Butler that I already mentioned, Wannabe. I really think that one would have been okay. But that's fine. Blasting the Ruins for Magical Explosion decks. Yep. Next up, we actually got a comment in the previous stream that Spell Vanishing was power crept in the next set, and I can sort of agree with that. This is the card in question, Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell. Counter trap. When a spell card is activated, discard one spell card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And if you do that, your opponent cannot activate spell cards with that name for the rest of the duel. This card, Spell Vanishing, costs 2 cards from hand, but this card costs specifically a spell card, so 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't know. I think the card's real good, though. Does it power creep Spell Vanishing? Maybe. I've definitely seen it in side decks, though. There are just certain decks, like, could you imagine running into Invoked and then just, no, you're not allowed to use Invocation for the whole game? There are certain decks that have one linchpin spell, and this really messes with that. Temple of the Kings had the very same errata in order to be unbanned. Yeah, and Blasting the Ruins was used in Blasting the Ruins. Yep, I agree. Curse Seal comes in and out of side decks. Play whenever a deck that relies on one spell like Invoked or Sky Striker is meta. Interesting. What's it hitting in Sky Striker with Hornet Drones at 1? Actually, hitting Hornet Drones isn't a bad idea because they recycle and then link up and then get it back. Might be a consideration for OSS. What is OSS? If Counter Fairies ever come back, then yeah, I know Guiding Ariane will prevent the discard cost, and that's pretty good. But can you negate your own spell and then lock your opponent out of that card for the mirror match? Interesting. That might be some next level idea. What card? Oh, man. This I'll play in Runics. In the side for Cosmic. Interesting. Oh, right. So you want to stop Cosmic Cyclone because you don't want your Runic spells banished. That makes sense. Does that mean it's currently meta? Since Runics are still meta? Or Runics got hit on the ban list not that hard, but I think we're worth considering today. That's really strong. Next up, Tower of Babel. This set has a lot of burn damage for some reason. Each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on this card when that spell card resolves. If the fourth spell counter is placed on this card, destroy this card, and if you do, the player who activated the spell at that time takes 3,000 points of damage. I actually just don't like the design of this card. Like, I'm not putting it in design mistake because I dislike it, even though I think it could be. I think I'm just going to put it in bad. I don't like the way that this card feels. That it just, you can activate 3 spells during your turn, and then your opponent takes 3,000 damage. It just doesn't feel fair. The actual effect is okay, I guess. Original Sinful Spoils, it summons a level 1 monster from your deck. Oh, that's what you hit with Curse Seal. Bossa Nova, you're late? No, you're not late. You're just in time. People have played this against Striker for Engage or with Anchor. Interesting. I don't like Tower of Babel. I think the mechanic of the card is pretty cool. For some reason, I see Tower of Babel everywhere. Elaborate. Tower of Babel's actually a little slow too because of the trap card. I'm wondering, I guess you could have 3 of these and activate them all at the same time and then activate 3 spells. And that's 6 cards, and then you could potentially be OTKing with it. I don't know. It's weird. I just don't like the design of the card. It might get up to filler, though. Next up, Spatial Collapse. And this card doesn't do what you think it does. Or at least it didn't do what I thought it did the first 20 times I read it. And maybe that's because it's had problem-solving card text. Chizu, that Tower of Babel just comes up in deck-building simulators. Interesting. Used in self FTK decks in order to quickly lose. But you can't. It's a trap. How do you activate it on the first turn? You can't self FTK with it. Back to Spatial Collapse. Continuous Trap. You can only activate this card if both you and your opponent each have 5 or less cards on the field. This is the part that I have either misread repeatedly or the card has changed slightly. I thought it was the combined total of cards on the field has to be 5 or less. No, it's each player has 5 or less. The maximum number of cards that each player can have on the field is 5. This card does nothing. Like, generously, it does a little something, but not that much. You can get around with not playing back row or sandbagging just a little bit. If this card was like 3 cards or less, it'd be really strong. It'd be like similar to Kaiser Coliseum. Like your opponent could set up in the wrong way and just not be allowed to summon. But right now I think it's just very bad. It doesn't impede very well. It could be outed very easily. That's a good call too. It doesn't do what it thinks it wants to do. It's barely even stopped Labyrinth. Next up, Chain Disappearance. When a monster with 1000 or less attack is summoned, banish that monster with 1000 or less attack. A little redundant. Then your opponent banishes all cards with the same name as that cards from their hand and deck. And poor Maneater Bug getting hit twice. I think that this is really good tech against certain decks, because you can just take out their linchpin monster, all copies of it, and like I did mention with the Butler, you could be activating it from hand even. This as a disruption tool, I think is really strong. The problem is 1000 or less attack, and that's a little harder. So it's very meta specific, but I think it's worth considering. Interesting. Saw play versus Purely in the side deck. Yeah? I guess you could play against like Melfi decks too. What else are weak until they're not? I'm wondering how it works with Black Garden, because it's worded so weirdly. Like, if this works with Black Garden, then it's slightly better, because Black Garden reduces the attack, or halves the attack, I believe. I don't know. Very interesting. Next up, Zero Gravity. Normal trap. Change the battle positions of all face-up monsters on the field. So, all of them, not just your opponents. We saw Windstorm of Etiqua in the previous stream, and it was okay. I think that this card is worse than that, situationally worse than that card. I think there's Earthquake, which does something similar too. I don't know. It's not bad, but like changing battle positions is one of the least impactful effects in the game, unless it does matter. Like certain archetypes, I guess Morphtronic and Karakuri do really care about battle positions, but there's not a lot that does. Next up, Dark Mirror Force, the evil Mirror Force. When normal trap, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, banish all defense position monsters your opponent controls. Ooh, it banishes. That's an upgrade over Mirror Force. This card confuses me a lot. Why does it care about defense position? And if your opponent is attacking you, do they have lots of defense position monsters? When does this card come up? I've heard, and this is not a joke, that you activate Mirror Force and Dark Mirror Force in the same chain based on the same attack, and then it wipes out all your opponent's monsters, even banishing some. But man, this is just so much less impactful. And it doesn't make sense to me. Like, Dark Mirror Force takes your opponent's attack and reflects it back. Dark Mirror Force takes your opponent's attack and then converts it to destroying their defense position monsters, so it doesn't even stop all their monsters. It punishes people that play around Mirror Force. I agree with that. Oh, this is interesting. Dark Mirror Force is great against decks which attack from defense position. So your Rampart Blaster or your Super Heavy Samurai deck. This card is great anti-Super Heavy Samurai tech, I guess. Dark Mirror Force and Radiant Mirror Force desperately need retrains. They're just worse Mirror Forces. I agree. Adam, wow, been a while since you streamed? No, I streamed 2 weeks ago. But I'm going to try to work on consistency, hopefully Saturdays. Hopefully. Zero Gravity is another clown control tech card. Interesting. Is it... Wow, let me think about that. It does shift both your clowns at the same time. So you do get value out of your clowns. And it is a disruption tool. Interesting. The dub also somehow mistakenly had Yami Yugi place this card face down in the ceremonial duel. That's funny. Maybe Yami is playing Dark Mirror Force. There's a lot of cards in Yugi's deck. I guess it's to use again people that try to poke for damage while playing stall decks. Interesting. Mirror Force cards only really worked when it was, what was the main? When it was the main, the main was actually a threat in the meta. What? Mirror Force cards only really worked when the main was actually a threat in the meta. Yes. Yami's deck inconsistent? I agree. Bossa Nova is a little sloshed at the moment. Don't worry, I thought I was just struggling. That's okay. It's probably pretty late in a lot of different places. I tried to get the best compromise for the European audience and the West Coast audience, and it is just, what is that, 8 time zones? It might be 10 time zones if you go all the way to GMT. So it's a lot of time zones to try to accommodate. Next up, Energy Drain. Target one face-up monster you control. It gains 200 attack/defense for each card your opponent currently has in their hand until the end of this turn. So, ultimate tech, you have Sasuke Samurai number 3, an Energy Drain, and then you gain 1400 attack and defense. That's not good at all. The ceiling for this card is really low. I feel like Yami's deck has like 10 cards or something. It's only 2 a.m. here. It's a great time to be watching. Oh, that's very late to me. It's 8 p.m. here. Back to Energy Drain. Not particularly good. The ceiling's just too low on the card. I think Rising Power gives you like 1500 attack, and that card's still not good. There's also, I think there's just one that gives you 1000, no questions asked. Still not good. Next up, Giga Gaga Gigo. See, try saying that at all. Not 3 times fast, just at all. I practice a lot. Water attribute, level 5, Reptile. In order to fight tremendous evil, he gained formidable power through body reconstruction, but lost his heart and his redemption. 2450 attack, 1500 defense. I'm just gonna say it's good on release. It is top tier lore. I love how Giga Gaga Gigo is not the endpoint if you count Gagigo the Risen, but Goga Giga Gaga Gigo. I don't think that this is intentional, but the name reminds me of like Gygas from the Mother series or Geeg. We got the comment Giga Gaga Gigoat. Water beat down my beloved. Oh yeah. You normal summon this under a legendary ocean, and then you just wail, and that's like, I think a legendary ocean gives it 200 attack points, so that's 2650 on a normal attack. This guy punches over summon skull on your normal summon. It's really nice. Perhaps this is the least dynamically posed Gagigo, but also very important for the story. I can agree with that. Good on release, though, is about as high as I want to give it. Next up, we have another lore card. Totally went over my head. But this card is Marin. It's the same card as Outstanding Dog Marin and Mecha Dog Marin and Skull Dog Marin. This is like the Dark Lucius or the Dark Grepher equivalent to the Marin cards, which is really interesting. This is Mad Dog of Darkness, Dark Attribute, level 4, Beast. He used to be a normal dog who played around in a park, but was corrupted by the powers of darkness. 1900 attack, 1400 defense. I do really like how in this set in particular, the number of normal monsters has been getting progressively lower as we continue through the game. I actually got a graph for that. We're right here in IOC. I think every single normal monster in this set has at least a little thought behind it. We're not giving you terrible vanilla monsters. We're giving you decently statted types of different monsters. This is 1900 attack. This is great. It is a beast, which means that this is a rabbit target for certain beast decks if you really want to. Marin if Braun found him. Interesting. Braun the Mad King from the Dark World? I think like Grin the Tactician, maybe? I don't know. What is the corrupting influence of the Dark World? Really, really cool effect. For some reason, it has like horns on its ears. I guess it's mid-transformation. But you can actually see the little M on the collar. That's the same M as the Marin cards. So, confirmed. Oh no. Chizu points out, now the effect monsters have no thought put behind them. I wouldn't go that far. Gagigo Line Carrier, the Vanilla's post 2002. Yeah. We continue our vanilla train with Neobug. Earth attribute, level 4, insect, a huge bug-like monster said to come from another planet. It gathers in swarms. 1800 attack, 1700 defense. Real good stat lineup. Don't think we have Insect Knight yet, so this is the new strongest bug. But very interestingly enough, even when you're playing a full playset of Insect Knight in your Demise Doomdozer deck, use this card with Advanced Ritual Art to get out your Demise King of Armageddon, and then you banish Neobug or Insect Knight from grave in order to summon the Doomdozer. And some people were playing not just the Insect Knight, but copies of Neobug additionally. So this card actually did have some meta impact. Right now, you might play Insect Knight, or you might play Neobug if you are running it as a rabbit target, I guess. I don't know. Interesting that it's not quite inferior to Insect Knight. Next up, Sea Serpent Warrior of Darkness. Water attribute, level 4, Sea Serpent. A warrior who defends the Sea of the Darkness. He prides himself on the fighting prowess both on ground and, of course, in the water. 1800 attack, 1500 defense. Actually gonna end up putting him in filler because 1800 is less than 1900. It's also a weird type. There's not a lot of Sea Serpent support at any point in the game. So next up, Terror King Salmon. Water attribute, level 4, Fish. A feared salmon, master of the Sea of Darkness. Its roe is the best delicacy in the world of darkness. A lot of references to the Sea of Darkness and the World of Darkness. I don't know if that ever becomes something useful. I know the Dark World exists, but like, I don't think I've heard very mentions of the Sea of Darkness. 2400 attack, 1000 defense. Interesting. So you use Sea Serpent Warrior of Darkness specifically to make Bahamut Shark with Rabbit. I like that. It will be good in the future. Okay. I'll put that a little higher. Put it a little higher. Terror King Salmon, though, 2400 attack, 1000 defense. Where do we put Gagigo? I think... Where did we put Gagigo? Where is Gagigo? I think we put it like here for Terror King Salmon. There's Gagigo. From Mr. Metal, the influence of being in Dark World is strange and inconsistent. Sometimes you mutate, and sometimes the residents mind control you. It's better than being in Pandemonium, but not by much. Excellent. Phantasm Spiral Monarch card. Is that the Monarch stat? I guess it is the Monarch stat lineup. I thought it was 1200 defense for some reason. Terror King Salmon got his queen recently. Yeah. But that's way in the future. Right now I'm gonna say filler. Maybe. I'm open to maybe putting it in Gimmick. In Phantasm Spiral specifically. Next up, Blazing Impachi. Fire attribute, level 4. Pyro, normal. A wicked wood spirit, now burning in flames. Its fire attack is powerful, but soon it will be nothing but ashes. 1850 attack, 0 defense. And like, slight lore problem? It doesn't turn into ashes, it turns into charcoal Impachi. Or Woodborg Impachi. But we're not going to worry about that. Card's really cool. 0 defense. I think we put it here. Top tier lore card. I agree with that. Next up, Burning Algae. Strangely enough, this card actually got a retrain for some reason, but that's not tonight. I was super surprised by that. I think it's called like Smoldering Embers or something. But what does Burning Algae do? Fire attribute, level 3, Pyro, effect. When this card is sent to the graveyard, increase your opponent's life points by 1000. 500 attack, 1500 defense. Do you want to be giving your opponent life points? No. Does this card work with Nurse and Bad Reaction of Samuchi? Yes. Is that a good strategy? Possibly. I think there's only one place where this card can go. Reasonably. Any level 4 normal is a rescue rabbit / box of friends target. Technically, yes, but some stand out way more than others. And actually, any level 4 or lower normal monster. Rescue rabbit can actually pull level 3s, 2s, and 1s if it wants to. Something worth noting is that the Dark World mentioned in the lore, like Mad Dog of Darkness, is not the same Dark World as the archetype. Where is that Dark World? Why are there two different Dark Worlds? Wait, what about Dark Ruler of the Abyss? Where does he go? The retrain does synergize with Burning Algae. Heal Burn, and it's a bad card. I can agree with that. When does Bad Reaction come out? I think it might already be out. I'm not sure. Next up, the Thing in the Crater. I always thought that this card was almost useful. Fire attribute, level 4, Pyro effect. When this card is destroyed and sent to the field, sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon one Pyro type monster from your hand. 1000 attack, 1200 defense. So it's got to be destroyed, but it doesn't have to be destroyed by battle. So you could pop it with things like Circle of the Fire Kings or Thunder Crash. But then the targets that it special summons aren't that great either. They're Pyro monsters, and Pyro is a much better type right now. I'm not going to argue that. Snake Eye does a lot to help the Pyro type, but are you running this in Snake Eye? No. Is there a potential use for it? Possibly. I think I'm just going to put it here. The card, I've always wanted it to be good, though. Maybe it's just me being hopeful, saying it's good on release. Next up is Molten Zombie, and this card makes me sad every time I see it. Fire attribute, level 4, Pyro effect. When this card is special summoned from your graveyard, when this card is special summoned from the graveyard, draw one card. 1600 attack, 400 defense. They made this card Pyro instead of Zombie. And, you know, fair point, Molten Zombie, they chose the Molten part over the Zombie part, but can you imagine Molten Zombie being a zombie? That card would be crazy. Getting to draw cards, and that's what zombies do, is they recover from the graveyard? But right now, it's not just filler outclassed, it's literally outclassed by a card in this set. And that's really sad. He looks like a flaming ghost. I can agree with that. I've always wanted to make like Molten Zombie and the Thing in the Crater good, but great comment from Chizu. This is the card of safe return we have at home. I love it. Imagine this in a zombie or a reptile deck. Yeah, it'd be way too strong. Okay. I need to pull up. Where are you? Not you. Not you. Here we go. Okay. I pulled up the other DMOC for reference. Oh. Flame Ghost the Fusion Monster. I know what you're talking about now, yeah. Okay, so what does DMOC do? Originally? And the errata. So, let's start with the original. Dark Magician of Chaos, Dark Attribute, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Spellcaster effect. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one spell card in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. Banish any monster destroyed by the battle with this card. If this face-up card would leave the field, banish it instead. 2800 attack, 1600 defense. Now, what change did they do to it? The new one has the effect, during the end phase, if this card was normal or special summoned this turn, you can target one spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So, big change, waits till the end phase. You can only use this effect of Demok once per turn. Hard once per turn. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, after damage calculation, banish that opponent's monster. That changes whatever. It's problem-solving card text. If this face-up card would leave the field, banish it instead. Man, they really messed with Demok in a subtle way that's probably for the best, but it just makes me sad. I think possibly the solution could have been just the hard once per turn on the spell recursion. Possibly. The big problem with Demok is that it's loopy. That you go Demok, you tribute it with Mass Driver, you have spell economics, you use Dimension Fusion, you bring back Demok, you tribute it with Mass Driver, you use Dimension Fusion, you get back Demok, over and over and over again. This card, Cannon Soldier, Tomb Cannon Soldier, there's a lot of ways that you can burn with Demok, and it's just not good for the game. But theoretically, if you're using it correctly, Demok's not bad. It's just loop material is the problem. From Mo Syafrian Abi, making a whole video on cards like Molten Zombie, where you try to change bad cards to be good without changing the actual effect. Interesting. So keep the rules text the same, but just change like attribute or type a little bit. That'd be interesting. Actually, the next card in the list, I want to change the attribute a little bit. Demok was so broken, now it's meh. Look how they slaughtered my boy. End phase is the change. The last effect means that you can't banish it face down with evenly matched. Oh, wow. Demok got a tiny buff. Even if you don't loop it, it's insane. I don't know. Getting back one spell card once, I think, just makes the card playable. Getting out Demok is a little hard. You're not normal summoning it. You want to be special summoning it. You got Dedication through Light and Darkness coming up in, I don't know, 20, 30 cards. Reasoning is a great way to get it out. Monster Gate. But how are you getting Demok out is the question. I guess the errata's fine. It makes me sad, but it's not that bad. Card's playable if you really want to. I think everyone can agree it was a design mistake, though. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Next up, Manticore of Darkness. That's weird. I guess my image sequence is slightly out of order. Oh. Oh, I see what happened. So Gora Turtle of Illusion is not in the list. This is because it is an illusion. No, it's because I left the picture in the same folder as the card image, so it never got uploaded. Oh, that's a little sad. But what does Gora Turtle of Illusion do? Water attribute, level 4. Negate the effect of spell cards controlled by your opponent that target this face-up card on the field. 1200 attack, 1400 defense. Not really worth mentioning. Hypothetically, I think I'd just put in filler outclassed or bad. It just doesn't have a good stat lineup. The effect on an 1800 attack monster would have been pretty good. But right now it doesn't do anything. Just partial protection from targeting. Here's the artwork for reference. Next up, Manticore of Darkness, which is not dark, it's fire. Level 6, Beast Warrior, effect. During the end phase of the turn that this card was sent to the graveyard, from anywhere, you can send to the graveyard one beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster from your hand or your side of the field. Special summon this card from your graveyard. It sends, it doesn't destroy. If it does destroy, then this card would be pretty good in Fire King. You'd get to mill this card or Foolish Burial it, and then during the end phase, you'd get to pop and then bring it back. There's some cool stuff. This card has a problem that it loops into itself during the end phase. So if you can get, if you can get this card going, then that means that you can take the Manticore that you just special summoned and use it as material for the other Manticore. And for some reason this wasn't put to 1, it was put to 2, so you could still loop it. I'd like the card a lot better if it didn't do that. I think it's almost good in Fire King, and that's sad. Manticore of Darkness, but it's fire. I sure hope someone got fired for that blunder. I don't think that they should get fired, but I don't like the card. Next up, Stealth Bird, just better than Bogalgian. Dark attribute, level 3, Winged Beast, effect. Once per turn, you can change this face-up card to face-down defense position. When this card is flip summoned, inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. 700 attack, 1700 defense. This is your win condition. In a lot of decks, this is your recurring burn win condition. It's a little surprising that this card wasn't released with Swarm of Scarabs and Swarm of Locusts. I guess it was, I don't know, it's very interesting. Have 2 Manticore, discard the other Manticore, pitch another Manticore, repeat loops with card of safe return, and you get Exodia easily. Yep. Stealth Bird, classic playground strategy. I mean, the card's, good for stall and burn. Next up, Sacred Crane. Light attribute, level 4, Winged Beast. If this card is special summoned, draw 1 card. If, not when, so it doesn't miss the timing, 1600 attack, 400 defense. You can special summon this from the deck with Swallow's Nest. You can special summon it from hand with Marauding Captain. You can special summon it from grave with Monster Reborn. You can special... You get the picture. Sacred Crane, just a much better version of Molten Zombie. And I really like it. There's Sacred Crane Turbo, and it's great. You can special summon it directly from the deck with Ninjutsu Art of Transformation. That's something that I've thought about but never actually executed. But Sacred Crane, it is really great draw power, and I love it. Definitely a highlight in the set. Next up, Enraged Battle-Ox. Looks like we got a beast theme in this set, like Chaos and Beasts. Earth attribute, level 4, Beast Warrior. If a beast, beast warrior, or winged beast type monster you control attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. 1700 attack, 1000 defense. I'm just gonna say good on release. would be even better if Sacred Crane had 1500 attack. Then you could bring it out with Shining Angel. Ooh. Sacred Crane means that Konami is a single busted piece of generic Wing Beast support from ruining the format. I wouldn't go that far. But Sacred Crane is just one of my favorites. Next up, Dawn Turtle. Water attribute, level 3, reptile, effect. When this card is normal summoned or flip summoned, you can special summon any number of Dawn Turtles from your hand. 1100 attack, 1200 defense. The effect's not bad. Swarming's good, but it's specifically from hand, which means that you have to have multiple in your hand. If it was from deck, that'd be really, really strong, but it's from hand. And the odds of you pulling multiple Dawn Turtles on your opening, and in this format, what are you going to do with 3 little weak monsters? Yeah, XZ spam in theory. In execution, just very bad. It's just the odds of hitting 2 of these are pretty low. Typically, sets have a big theme and a small theme. For example, Magician's Force has spell counters as a main theme and unions as a mini theme. I actually think someday I'll do the OCG rundown. I think part of the problem is a lot of these TCG sets, like Invasion of Chaos, are actually 2 OCG sets smashed together. And I don't know off the top of my head which 2. But it'll be a fun comparison video sometime. Next up, Balloon Lizard. Earth attribute, level 4. Reptile. Put 1 counter on this card during each of your standby phases. When this card is destroyed, inflict damage to the controller of the card that destroyed it, so actually it can hit you, equal to the number of counters times 400 points. 500 attack, 1900 defense. That's a lot of defense points at least, but it's got to last a long time, and then it can backfire and hit you. I don't like this card. Next up, Dark Triceratops. Earth attribute, level 6. Dinosaur effect. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. 2400 attack, 1500 defense. It's like a upgraded version of Mad Sword Beast. I'm just gonna say it's good. Balloon Lizard. Peak Playground Yu-Gi-Oh card design. I like that explanation. Next up, Hyper Hammerhead. Earth attribute, level 4, Dinosaur, effect. At the end of the damage step, if an opponent's monster that battled this card is not destroyed, return that opponent's monster to the hand. 1500 attack, 1200 defense. And that's not a bad effect. It's a wall breaker, but it's not a Drillroid, if that makes sense. Ooh, argument that Mad Sword Beast is better than Dark Triceratops. I can agree, but I mean, if you are tributing. Is Dark Triceratops Monarch stats? It's not Monarch stats. Next up, Black Tyranno. Earth attribute, level 7. Dinosaur effect. If the only cards your opponent controls are defense position monsters, this card can attack directly. 2600 attack, 1800 defense. Oh, I guess if your opponent has back row, then this can't attack directly? That sounds weird. I actually pulled this card out of Invasion of Chaos the first time Invasion of Chaos came out. I know it had a re-release, but I still have it. It's one of my favorite cards, and it is thoroughly okay. It might even go in the Outclassed. Yeah, I think Hyper Hammerhead was meta at 1.2, but I can't for the life of me find it. Like, you think that would be in Jirax or Dino Rabbit or something as a tech card? Because it's not bad. I just don't know where it would go. Black Tyranna, funny build around, but not good, but not too good, but it's still neat. Next up, Anti-Aircraft Flower. Earth attribute, level 3, plant, effect. By tributing one insect type monster on your side of the field, inflict 800 points of burn damage to your opponent's life points. 0 attack, 1600 defense. Oh no, it's a tribute to burn. Oh no, this is an FTK card. Well, why has this not come up more often? I think the fact that it's limited to just insects caps the potential for this card. Maybe there's a good way to FTK with it, but I don't think there is. You have to special summon, or not necessarily special summon, you got to get out 10 insects to FTK with that. It's a little hard. I think, out of principle, Tribute to Burn just belongs in Design Mistake. You don't want to support FTKs. So I do love the artwork because there is a teeny tiny skull ladybug of doom on it. On the, what is that, the stamen of the daffodil? It is quite possibly broken. If there's a new insect plant, oh, I know what you're talking about. The Ragnakara, the Ragnakara deck could possibly use it. That is interesting. Most insect decks also lock into insects, yeah. It's pretty good that it's bad. I cannot make the foghorn sound. I can't make it. It's a good thing that there are no decent insect decks that can use this. Yeah. I think it's a design limiting card for the future, but it might not even be on Konami's radar. Yeah, Ragnakara. Ragnaraka. Ragnar. I know what it is, but I'm not winning the spelling bee anytime soon. Next up, Brickle Fairy. Earth attribute, level 4. Plant, effect. Your opponent cannot attack insect monsters. If this card battled a monster at the end of the damage step, change that monster to defense position. 300 attack, 2000 defense. Theoretically, this is good. Plant Insect Alliance, but I don't think it's worth it. Next up, Pinch Hopper. Earth attribute, level 4, insect, effect. When this card you control is sent to your graveyard, you can special summon one insect monster from your hand. This is a win effect, so it can miss the timing. There's a lot of ways that you can miss the timing with this card. You can't, like, tribute it to summon a monster. And there's just... If this were only an if, this card would be better. It'd be a better version of the Thing in the Crater, but I don't think it would be good. So right now I'm just gonna put it in bad. Theoretically, it's not bad, but in practice it is. I guess you could tribute it with your anti-aircraft flower and then bring out another insect from your hand. And maybe if you have a way of looping pinch hoppers, but you can't because the aircraft flower, now that I think of it, the aircraft flower would cause it to miss the timing, so you can't even do that. Pinch hopper, no. It's gimmicky good back when it's gimmicky and could be used back then for insect beatdown. I think there's just better ways. I think, are you running Pinch Hopper or are you running Howling Insect? And you're running Howling Insect in your insect deck. Or maybe Gokipon. Yeah, I'm guessing you're missing the timing with the aircraft flower because the burn damage happens after it's sent to the graveyard. I just don't like Pinch Hopper. It's almost good. Next up, Skullmark Ladybug, which I just called Skullmark Ladybug of Doom because I get confused with 4-star Ladybug of Doom. Earth Attribute, level 4, Insect effect. When this card is sent to the graveyard, increase your life points by 1,000 points. Hey look, it's Burning Algae, but a little bit better than Burning Algae actually. Is this good though? It's better. It's a lot better than Burning Algae. That's a beneficial effect, but is it enough to consider running the card? Like, why would you be running this card? I think filler. Life being effects being better due to time rules and seeing meta play is never not funny. Okay. But are you running Skullmark Ladybug or are you running Golden Ladybug? I think you're running Golden Ladybug. This isn't even the best life point gain Ladybug. It's just no. It's all playing Tearlaments? What? No, that is weird. I guess I underestimated the Ladybug. Was a tech and Tearlament when going to time, not for very long, but it has happened. You can send it with Beatrice. And you could gain it off of the milling. Interesting. I guess technically meta at one point. But begrudgingly, I guess. You can just mill it. Yeah. Next up, Insect Princess. Wind Attribute, level 6, Insect effect. All insect monsters your opponent controls are changed to attack position. If this card destroys an insect monster by battle, this card gains 500 attack, but it only starts with 1900 and 1200 defense on level 6. So you gotta attribute this. It's interesting. More, insect anti-insect, but you're not running this against Insectors. I don't even know if you run Insect Barrier against... Well, Insectors would pop it, but against a theoretical meta insect deck, you're not running it. Next up, Amphibious Bugroth Mark III. They go all the way up to Mark 11 at some point. Water Attribute, level 4, Machine, effect. While Umi is face up on the field, this card can attack your opponent's life points directly. 1500 attack, 1300 defense. Oh yeah, there's an Umi sub-theme in this set. It's, whatever. I don't even think you run an Umi deck. Next up, also on the Umi train, Torpedo Fish. I think this is Gyo-Rai, like a lightning fish in Japan. Very cool. Water Attribute, level 3. Fish, effect. While Umi is face up on the field, this card is unaffected by any spell cards, which includes Umi, so you don't get the attack bonus. Womp womp. I think it's just bad. Like, yes, and we're getting to it. It does have an interaction with a future card, but I don't think it's worth it. Mark 3 is better than the Mark 11. I can agree with that. I love how Bugroth has anti-synergy with the original Umi. Oh yeah. Because it's a machine and the original Umi would reduce its attack. That's funny. If only Torpedo Fish had better stats, I don't think that would save it. Maybe like 1800 attack would help. Next up, Levia Dragon Daedalus. Water Attribute, level 7, very important. That means that with a Legendary Ocean, this is a 1 tribute monster, really strong. Sea Serpent effect. You can send one face-up Umi you control to the graveyard, destroy all other cards on the field. 2600 attack, 1500 defense. That's a really, really strong effect. And it goes into the meta at one point. This is your water beatdown. This is a really, really good card. It's got an upgraded version when we get the water structure deck that is not worth the effort. But just this one, and its lower version, Kodaris, which comes out way later, still worth considering if you are running Umi, and some of the Umi clones are pretty okay. Cracked in early Duel Links and Playground play. It was meta in Duel Links. Yeah. I've seen it somewhere in Water Beatdown. Next up, Orca Mega Fortress of Darkness, Water, level 5, Sea Serpent, effect, Sea Serpent. I guess Sea Serpent is just sea monster in general. Even though this is mammal. Mammal is beast. Oh, interesting. Duel Links, you get a free Umi. Cool. Effect. By tributing one torpedo fish on your side of the field, destroy one monster on the field. By tributing one cannonball spear shellfish on your side of the field, destroy one spell or trap card on the field. So this turns your monsters into, your very specific monsters into Exiled Force and Deep Sweeper, I think it is the other one that tributes and pops spells and traps. So, why? Ooh, I will never understand why the Orca can't discard its ammo. Like, who thought tributing would be worthwhile? Yeah, it's just way too hard to get them on board. If Orca was level 4, it could be summoned easily. Well, we got a Legendary Ocean, so it is level 4. Like, Terraforming's at 3. We got a Legendary Ocean. The level is not the problem. The synergy with the other cards is the problem. Next up, Cannonball Spear Shellfish. This is a nasty looking snail. Water attribute, level 2. Aqua, effect. While Umi is face up on the field, this card is unaffected by any spell cards, including Umi. 1000 attack, 1000 defense. Goes right next to Torpedo Fish. Or I guess I'll keep them in order. Next up, Mataza the Zapper. Dark attribute, level 3, Warrior, effect. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. Excellent. Control of this face-up card on the field cannot switch, which is whatever. I mean, we got Blindly Loyal Goblin in the previous set, so I guess this was an effect worth putting on cards. 1300 attack, 800 defense. The card's really decent in the right toolbox. Like Reinforcement of the Army at 3, you can get out Mataza the Zapper. Multi-attack, you can break down through some weak monsters, maybe kill your Ojama tokens, maybe get through their Scapegoat tokens. Yeah. Maybe turning those cards into pendulums would boost them to high ceiling. No, I don't think you're increasing the viability of Torpedo Fish and Cannonball Spear Shellfish. It's a second version of Armed Samurai Benkai for the Benkai OTK. Interesting. Very gimmicky for OTK equipped decks. Yeah. I can see that. I can see it going into the gimmick. Next up, this is possibly one of the first cards I've ever seen as Guardian Angel Joan. I still have my copy from 20 years ago. Light attribute, level 8, Fairy, effect. When this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, gain life points equal to the attack equal to the original attack of the destroyed monster in the graveyard. 2800 attack, 2000 defense. And it's okay. Life drain effect is okay, it's whatever. Stat line is okay, it's whatever. Even if you special summon this directly from hand with Valhalla, it's not doing much. I do love that in the OCG, there's a very hard to see halo on the card. I agree, it should have been better, but I don't know. Gaining life points sounds like it will do something. And it just doesn't advance the game state. Next up, Manju of the 10,000 Hands. Light attribute, level 4, fairy effect. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can add 1 ritual monster or 1 ritual spell from your deck to your hand. 1400 attack, 1000 defense. Yep. I think it's pretty easy. You know. You run this in ritual decks sometimes. There are other options, not gonna lie. But I think that this one is still pretty good. There, are you running Sonic Bird? Are you running Manju? Are you running Senju? There's a lot of competition in there, and your normal summoner ritual deck is not the most important thing, but I think we can all agree that it's worth considering. It's only slightly outclassed by the incantations. It's pretty close. Yeah, I can agree with that. Most ritual decks have their own searcher. I agree with that. And there's a lot of generic ritual search out there. But specifically, you summon Manju, and then if you can get, the ball rolling, you could tribute the Manju. I think Megalith. There are a handful of level 4 ritual monsters that you could instantly get out with Manju. And I think that's pretty cool. He was the best support for a really long time. I agree with that. Outclassed by Diviner of the Herald, but still good. Why is Lukunga worth considering? Because it is not once per turn, and it just summons a lot of tokens. Like, you can really go ham Link or Synchro climbing with Lukunga. Because you're filling your graveyard, and if you're specifically looking for more water monsters and being mindful of that, you can really go off with Lukunga. Next up, Getsufuma. This is the mascot from a Konami video game called Getsufuma-den. And the next card is the final boss. Very fun. Dark attribute, level 4, warrior, effect. If this card battles a fiend or zombie monster, destroy that monster at the end of the damage step. 1700 attack, 1200 defense. I think you put it in your warrior toolbox. In case you're going against a fiend or a zombie deck. And zombies, pretty strong. Maybe you're siding it in your warrior toolbox, but zombies, meta for a lot of the game. The final boss from Getsufuma-den is Ryu Koki. And the Ryu in this card name is actually dragon. So this is Dragon Bone Demon in Japanese. If you translate it, it got slightly abridged to Ryu Koki in the English for some reason. But it sort of even looks like a dragon. You see its long tail. I always thought that was its knee behind its arm. But Dragon Bone Demon. Very interesting. But what does it do? It does the opposite of Ryu Koki. Or it does the opposite of Getsafuma. Dark Attribute, level 6, Zombie effect. At the end of the damage step, if this card battled a warrior or spellcaster monster, destroy that monster. It can get over Dark Magician. 2,400 attack, 2,000 defense, and yes, it is a great pyramid turtle effect, or a great pyramid turtle target. It's just one that you run in your zombie decks. Next up, Griffin's Feather Duster. Normal spell, destroy all spell and trap cards on your side of the field. Increase your life points by the number of destroyed cards times 500 points. Konami loves gaining life points in this set, and it is just not useful. Ooh, Ryu Koki almost single-handedly made zombies a dominant deck in GOAT by being one of the easiest to get out boss monsters. I agree with that. Yeah, Griffin's Feather Duster. Absolutely awful. This is not Harpy's Feather Duster. Burn card advantage, gain life points. Wow. It's slightly worse than Emergency Provisions, but also slightly different than Emergency Provisions. That one gives you 1,000 life points, but it sins instead of destroys, so potentially you could get destruction triggers, but the card's not worth it. Next up, we have Scapegoat at Home, Stray Lambs, normal spell, special summon 2 lamb tokens, Beast, Earth, level 1, attack 0, defense 0, and defense position. You cannot summon other monsters the turn you activate this card, but you can set. This card sets up for a tribute set, I guess. I don't like Stray Lambs. It's not as good as Scapegoat. It doesn't give you as many tokens, less bodies. It's not a quick play spell, so Scapegoat does still lock you out of summoning, but it's not the same. It is interesting that these can be tributed for any reason. Like the Scapegoat tokens can't be tributed for a tribute summon, but these Stray Lambs can. It's just not worth giving up your normal summon or your special summon. I can't put it in very bad though, can I? Who would run this even when Scapegoat was limited? Yeah. And it's even sadder because there's actually a pretty decent token spell in this set. Next up, we just got Solid Removal with Smashing Ground. Normal spell, destroy the one face-up monster your opponent controls that has the highest defense. Your choice if tied. I don't think you're using targeting destruction right now. Oh, it doesn't target. I don't think you're using destruction in general. And if you are, you're probably using Soul Taker because it'll cause cards to miss the timing, but the card was really strong for a really long time. Griffins should have been an archetype like Harpies, but focused on back row protection from trap decks to oppose the Harpies popping. Ooh, I wonder if Griffins and Harpies are like natural enemies in mythology. That'd be interesting. Just put it in bad. Okay. The card is pretty decent in something. Oh, it's a fist. Smashing ground, you're punching really hard and you're smashing the ground. Next up, probably pretty fair to say design mistake with Dimension Fusion. I don't know if it's necessarily Dimension Fusion's fault, but man. Normal spell, pay 2,000 life points. Both players special summon as many of their removed from play monsters as possible. Just mass special summon. This card doesn't contribute to the game very well. There's just way too many degenerate things that you can do. And as mentioned earlier, there's the loop with spell economics, dimension fusion, demock, and a tribute to burn card for an FTK. They made a Manticore of Smashing Ground recently. Interesting. Smashing Ground and Sakuretsu armor were particularly great for being premium 1-for-1 removal, while most importantly being common, which was one of the main ways poor kids could even compete in locals. Yeah, I think I can agree with that, which is a little sad. Dimension Fusion, broken design mistake. Dimension Fusion is unquestionably a design mistake. Dimension Fusion was like Soul Charge, but released earlier. Oh yeah, Soul Charge. Ugh. We'll get there when we get there. I can't believe Soul Charge was released. Next up, Dedication Through Light and Darkness. Quick play spell. Tribute 1 Dark Magician. Special summon 1 Dark Magician of Chaos from your hand, deck, or graveyard. How's it going to get into the graveyard, man? I think you run it in your Dark Magician deck when Demock is not banned. Obviously, if Demock is, depending on your format, if Demock is banned, you don't run this card. But I think bad. Really? I really like Dedication Through Light and Darkness. I think at this point, we can actually build a functional Dark Magician deck. We got Dark Magician Girl, we got Demock, we got Dedication Through Light and Darkness, we got Thousand Knives, we got Sage's Stone, we might not have Dark Magic Curtain yet. We got Skill Dark Magician. I think you can make a functional Dark Magician deck. You also need Buster Blader, Miracle Restoring, Emblem of Dragon Awakening. You want Dark Paladin in it. I think you can make a functional Dark Magician deck. You're probably not running Dark Flare Knight and Mirage Knight, but I guess you could. I think it could work. We'll do some theory crafting someday. This was the precursor to Chaos Scepter Blast. I think Chaos Scepter Blast is just Demock's attack, or Magician of Black Chaos's attack. They're very similar. Back then, it's hard to summon Dark Magician. What about Skilled Dark Magician? Find an archetype at the time category, because it didn't age great, and since the errata would never be considered. Put it in good. I'm going to keep it where it is. We'll consider it, and we'll think about it. I guess next up, Salvage. Target normal spell. Target 2 water monsters with 1500 or less attack in your graveyard. Add those targets to your hand. You're easily considering Salvage today. The card's just great. It's +1. It's just premium recursion. Next up, Ultra Evolution Pill. Normal spell, tribute 1 reptile monster. Special summon 1 dinosaur monster from your hand. Thematically, I like it. Actually, I don't like it in the actual game. And it's because you need to run reptiles and dinosaurs in the same deck. And they're not necessarily giving you anti-synergy or splitting your focus, and there's a pretty good compromise. Like Fossil Dig and King of the Feral Imps running together means you get more searchability in your deck, but I don't like the evolution pills for that reason specifically. I think Evolsaur can run this, but should they run this, I guess, is the question. Yeah. At least there aren't any level limits on it, yeah. Or any other limits, to be frank, yeah. The big thing for me is you're going -2 to special summon from hand. Unless you can get a good tribute trigger off of the monster. Yep. Next up, multiplication of ants. Tribute 1 insect type monster on your side of the field. Special summon 2 army ant tokens. Insect, earth, level 4, 500 attack, 1200 defense on your side of the field. The tokens cannot be used as a tribute for a tribute summon, but you can tribute the tokens for more ants. Like, you can multiply the ant tokens that you just made if you wanted to. I'm putting this as low worth considering today, because this can be a combo extender. I wish it didn't have to tribute insects. If it just tributed in general, the card would be way stronger, but it's not that bad. It's meh. Maybe gimmicky. It would be good if there was a good insect deck. I mean, it's good link fodder. It's decent board presence. Summoning tokens for links summons is always good. I agree with that. More bodies on board. Sometimes it's not even -1. I think it's net neutral card advantage, but it does require an insect on board. So, worth considering for me. Next up, Earth Chant. Ritual spell. This card can be used to ritual summon any Earth ritual monster. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total level equal exactly the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. I had to look at the wiki to see what Earth rituals are actually there, and the Megalith ones are. Like, other ones are Super War Lion, Javelin Beetle, Performance of the Sword, Lycanthrope, but there is an archetype that can benefit from Earth Chant. So, maybe we put it in the Megalith deck specifically, but if you're running Megaliths in the current game, but at this point in the game, Blackluster Soldier is the best Earth ritual. There's a lot of Megalith cards, though. And some of them are actually decent. There are different versions for it. There's a wind one that I have somewhere, but I don't remember the name. The light attribute has one. The dark attribute has contract with the abyss, but there's none for the fire and there's none for the water yet, which is a little sad because the water one, there are some water ritual decks. The fire one, I don't care. I think I can think of exactly one fire ritual monster. Megalith, but Megalith don't need the ritual spells. That's true. Yeah, Megaliths use their monsters as the ritual spells. Okay. I guess we put it in the gimmick then. It's potentially useful. But the one archetype that wants it doesn't need it. So sad. Next up, Jade Insect Whistle. Your opponent selects one insect type monster from their deck. After shuffling the deck, place the card on the top of the deck. You go -1 to top deck for your opponent. This card has exactly one application that I can think of, and that's like with Parasite Paraseed or maybe Parasite Paranoid. But like, I think it's very bad. I think this is accomplishing something for your opponent because they get to choose. So potentially it couldn't do nothing. Like if they're already running insects in their deck. Get the comment, the cooler the artwork, the worse the card. Oh no. Next up we have the fixed version of Destruction Ring. The fixed version of Ring of Destruction, Destruction Ring. Normal trap, destroy one face-up monster on your side of the field, big difference from Ring of Destruction, to inflict 1,000 points of damage to both players' life points. So it still causes the tie. Like, that's part of the reason why Ring of Destruction is such a bad card, or a poorly designed card, is because it causes ties. This causes ties. And it destroys your own monster. And it only burns for 1,000. This card is really bad. Hypothetically, there are decks that would benefit from destroying their own monsters, but you don't want a symmetric burn. I just don't see it being useful. Next up, we have Fiend's Hand Mirror, and for some reason they changed the coloring on the Fiend. It's way more purple in the Japanese artwork, and I like the purple better. But what does it do? Normal trap, switch the opponent's spell card effect that targets one spell or trap to another correct target. This, hypothetically, they're trying to hit you with MST, and then you make them MST themselves. You know you on your opponent, but they need to target it, and this card's just not great. It makes me sad. Which is worse, a flamethrower hula hoop or a ring with a tiny cartoon pirate bomb on it? I know which one I'd prefer. Next up, Compulse, or Compulsory Evacuation Device. Target one monster on the field, return that target to the hand. This card arguably has appreciated really well. Because so many extra deck monsters, or so many monsters in general, like to float on destruction, sometimes returning them to hand, or in the case of the extra deck, returning them to the extra deck is really strong. It'd be interesting to possibly use this card with the Butler, or maybe Wannabe, but I don't think it's worth that. It's still worth considering, even though it's a trap card. Where are you running it? I guess you're running it in your normal Labyrinth deck? I don't know. It sees play exactly in Labyrinth. Okay. It's a good disruption tool. I just don't think the traps are fast enough for most of the game. Yeah. Only in Labyrinth. Next up, a hero emerges. Whoa! Is that Spawn? No, I think it's Zombria the Dark, which people say is Spawn. Normal trap. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, your opponent chooses one random card from your hand. Then if it's a monster that can be special summoned, special summon it. Otherwise, send it to the graveyard. Ooh, very interesting card. That is Kaga Gagigo? No, it's not Gaga Gagigo. It's Zombria the Dark, right? Am I confused? Zombira, yeah. I think this card's pretty cool. Is this a sneak peek at hero support? Unfortunately, no, this isn't a hero card. Hero is in all caps. But I know for a fact that Jaden has used this in the anime, and I think he pulled Blade Edge out of his hand. Like, he activated it only when Blade Edge was in his hand. Very cool, though. Oh, asking who was on the compulsory evacuation device. I think that is Gagigo. Next up, self-destruct button. Oh boy, this card. Normal trap, you can only activate this card while your opponent's life points are lower, you can only activate this card while your life points are lower than your opponent's life points, and the difference is 7,000 or more. Both players' life points become 0. So there's a card like similar to this called Life Equalizer that just makes both players' life points 3,000. This card is so much worse. This card forces a draw. I used to think that this card was pointless and bad as a design mistake, but then I realized you can draw 2 out of the 3 games, and if you win or are somehow ahead in life points in game 3 with end of match procedures, you win the match. Self-destruct button was not a design mistake, it was a design on purpose. Why would you want this? Why would you want to trivialize the rest of the game? So you're losing, or you've put yourself in this position where you're about to lose, and then you just draw the match? Or draw the game, potentially draw the match? It is legal in the OCG, but most locals gentlemen ban it. Yeah, I don't think this card is healthy for the game. Imagine being spiteful enough to run self-destruct button. I really dislike it. I understand why it exists, but you have to think really hard on it to want to force a draw. Oh, Konami doesn't want it. I don't want it. No one wants it. Maybe it's like in chess where stalemates are preferable. I think you might also be able to win points by just drawing matches in tournaments, but maybe not. Next up, Curse of Darkness. Continuous trap. Each time a spell card is activated, immediately after it resolves, that player takes 1,000 damage. That's a lot of damage. Do you run this against Runic? Do you run this against Magical Musketeer? Are there ways to cheese this card? You're running 3 copies of Chain Energy and 3 copies of Curse of Darkness, and just your opponent burns themselves to death? I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it's just bad. It's interesting. It's always interesting when you get a soft floodgate effect. Like, your opponent can still activate spell cards, but they gotta think about it, or they gotta sequence it properly. Or maybe they waste their normal summon on their Breaker the Magical Warrior and then pop this instead of something else. Self-destruct button is made for the trolls. I can agree. Next up, another playground favorite. We have Begone, Knave! Continuous trap. If a monster inflicts battle damage to a player, return the monster to the owner's hand. I think bad. I can see a potential use for Begone, Knave. Not sure if it was intentional, but it's useful or not losing while playing last turn. If you get your life points low enough to proc either card but can't activate last turn, just self-destruct button. Interesting. Curse of Darkness feels like it could be a great burn spell for every deck in the time running spell-based spell and trap removal. Didn't this card see play, or Begone Knave or Curse of Darkness? Which one are you asking about? It's an interesting floodgate, I'll give you that. It's like lots of compulse, but it's also a little bad. Maybe it goes up to good on release. It's just bouncing extra deck monsters is pretty good. But you gotta take damage is the problem. Next up, DNA transplant. Continuous trap. Activate by declaring one monster attribute. All face-up monsters become that attribute. This changes characteristic, and that's only really good in gimmicks. Next up, Robin Zombie. A lot of continuous traps in here. If your monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, send the top card of their deck to the graveyard. Hey, I guess this is why Goblin Zombie mills when it does damage, I guess? I don't know. Card's not very good, though. Like, this does not advance your game state. You can use Begone Knave with Lord of the Heavenly Prison's infinite card advantage. Okay. Interesting. Begone Knave has moved to the gimmick tier, I think is fair. Penultimate card is Trap Jammer. When your opponent activates a trap card during the battle phase, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. For a long time, it was the golden age of battle traps, and Trap Jammer was great. You stop your Sakuretsu armor, you stop Mirror Force, you stop Dark Mirror Force, and then you laugh at your opponent for running Dark Mirror Force. There's a lot of cards that this stops, and it is just really efficient negation for it. Final card in the video is Invader of Darkness. Dark Attribute, level 8, Fiend effect. Your opponent cannot activate quick play spell cards. 2900 attack, 2500 defense. There is currently a very meta deck that relies almost entirely on quick play spell cards, and that'd be Runic. Does that mean that you consider Invader of Darkness? This is such a weird floodgate monster. The big question for me is, how do you get it out? Like, if you could normal summon this, like a Inspector Void version of Invader of Darkness, call it Dark Inspector, I don't know, something like that, then I'd definitely say that it was worth considering. But right now, it's just very awkward. It's really high level. How do you get it out? Like, you can't Valhalla. It doesn't have an inherent special summoning condition like Archlord Christia. So Invader of Darkness is important lore-wise? Yes, he is. He is very important lore-wise. I have no idea who he is or what he stands for, but we've seen him in cards a lot. Eldritch the Golden Lord is the current counter to Runic Stun. But Invader of Darkness, we could put him up here, right? I don't think he deserves to be up here, but he's going to be. And hit save. Oh, because we got a special request. Okay. And we save this one. Okay. Let's switch gears for a bit. Asleep. Here we go. There we go. So, we're going to be ending streams pretty consistently, hopefully, with updates and sneak peeks. So, update. I am having trouble with a future video, and it is specifically because I can't figure out the negation syntax for the semantic search on the wiki. So I actually got two different, it's different on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki and the Yugipedia. I want to make a video talking about the semantic search and explaining what it is, because it is an extremely useful tool, but boy, is either the command not well documented, or I'm doing something wrong, or it doesn't work the way I think it does, because I'm trying to look up and compile lists using semantic search. I want to exclude monster tokens, and this is the documentation the wiki says it uses, but it doesn't work. I tried using wildcards. I tried using fuzzy select in the names because all the tokens have the names. I tried a whole bunch of different things. Shizu's never heard of the semantic search. It is very useful, theoretically, because you can look up monsters which have effects that activate on summon, and then that's one category. And then you can look up searches from the deck as a second category, and you put those together, then you can find monsters which search from the deck on summon. Is a really useful tool, theoretically. But it doesn't like negation for some reason. And as a result, this has been causing problems. Like right now, Control Tab. Why are you not loading? Oh no. Right now I have been working on the rescue hedgehog video and compiling all the different combinations to see which ones exist and what new design space might be opened up. But unfortunately, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki will include the Rush Duel cards, and the Yugipedia includes tokens for some reason when I try the semantic search. So that's where I'm at. That's why the video is taking longer. But I think it'd be worth it to explain to people how the semantic search function works, what it is, and even talk a little bit about set theory. But I need to get better at it before I'm confident enough to make that video. Or someone needs to show me the white pages or documentation on the keywords, and it is just not intuitive enough. Or maybe I just lack comprehension of how wikis work or computer science. That is very possible. But yeah. Hopefully, Rescue Hedgehog deep dive video coming soon. But for now, it's the end of the night. I hope everyone sleeps well. Good night. Can you do semantic search on the official database? Am I confused? Yeah, official data doesn't have that yet. That's what I thought. But I'll be working on it. Good night.